Call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Mhm. Director Potts, would you please read our board priorities?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. Director Beck, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And the vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you very much. We're going to have a small change in the order of our agenda. We're going to move to student board reports next, and that will be followed by the showcase. So those two are just being reversed for some timing issues. Superintendent Tate, student board reports.
Thank you, Mr. President and board. We always enjoy having the students here and getting here when you can and staying as long as you possibly can. Shane was with us last time. The rest of you, this is your first time at the meeting. We'll call upon you and ask what's hot in the schools and what's going on, and we really enjoy hearing what you think is important because we don't get to every school event. So feel free to, during the 2 weeks between meetings, to keep a list and make sure when you come here to let us know and catch us up on everything in your school. So Connor, we're going to start on the left, and if your first time, introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are.
I don't know if this thing's on, but can just press the button. Okay. So my name's Connor Bedell. I'm a senior at Central. I'm involved in student council. I'm a senior class officer, and I have played baseball, golf, and track at my time at Central. And I have my mom here. Honey, if you want to stand up. Yes, that's her actual name. I did not just say that. And I also have a twin brother, Ian. His name is Ian. Go ahead.
My name is Aria Flake. I am a senior at Davenport Central. I participated in track and field, and I am a varsity football cheerleader. I participated in a club called Shades of Success, and my mom's here. Stand up. That's my mom, Demetria. And that's all.
Any report about activities or?
Oh, yeah, we have a lot. So we kicked off our hunger drive on last Monday, and we have a lot of fundraisers going on, and one of them that is coming up is we have an Iowa versus Northwestern tailgate. That'll be in the south lot next to the PAC, and we'll have games and stuff for families to come enjoy, and then as the game is about to kick off, people will move into the new auditorium, and we will project the game from the projector onto the screen, and everybody will be able to watch the game in the PAC.
And then another fundraiser that we have going on with the Hunger Drive is we're going to have water jugs in the cafeteria with different teachers' pictures on them, and we'll have people put money into the jug to vote for a teacher, and whatever teacher raises the most money in their jug is going to get taped to a wall in the gym at an audit that we're going to have.
So this Friday we have an event going called Pack the Truck, and Lou Jacks will be bringing a truck to the game, and we will have donation centers set up at the gates where you can donate food, and all the food at the end of the game will be packed into the truck and brought back to Central, and that will also go towards our food can total.
Another event that we have is our marching Blue Devils. They won the best horn line, best drum major, and best color guard at their last competition that they had.
And that's all that we have going on.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Ferguson. I am from North. I am a senior. I am a part of the cross-country team. I am one of the captains. I wouldn't say I'm the head captain, but I am one. I also play soccer in the spring, and I have participated in tennis and indoor track. And Mr. Mayfield used to be a old baseball coach of mine.
Any report about school activities?
What was that?
Any report about school activities?
Yes, quite a few. I probably should have also written them down. The cross-country team at North, let's start out with sports. Cross-country team at North got third in city, which is pretty hard for our varsity team really fell apart during that race. And then football, hasn't been the roughest of seasons we've had, but I wouldn't say it's been great. So far, I think we have 2 wins, not sure how many losses. Girls swim team, individually they do very well, but due to low numbers, they're incapable of winning a meet. It's not that they're not good, it's just that there's not enough people to fill all the events. And that's it for sports. And then Hunger Drive also started this week for us. We have a second block challenge where whatever second block class brings in the most cans for that class will win a pizza party at the end of next week. And that's what we also have something called Stop the Bop, which is they play really annoying music in the hallway until they get a certain amount of change donated towards the Hunger Drive. And that's how we're dealing with the Hunger Drive. Also, the Environmental Club, which I am the president of, is doing this Project Green. It's a private organization. It's it's all month long, and each day there's a special challenge. And Dr. Tate, I'm sure you're aware with the one student from North is doing a anti-styrofoam campaign, and that is a part of that challenge. That's where that idea came from. There were events, I'm sure everyone's aware of the texts that were sent out last week or whatever about some school shooting that was going to happen at North. There was a ton of students missing for that, and so that was kind of a big issue for a lot of classes because some teachers didn't even have a lesson for that day because there's just so many students gone. And that's about it for the events at North.
Hi, my name is Andrew Wright. I am a senior at Davenport West High School. I run cross country and track. And my parents are here, Andre and Karen Wright. You guys can stand. And here's Shane with the events at our school.
I introduced myself last time I was here, but just to reiterate, my name is Shane Eckhart. I'm also a senior at West. Some of the events that are going on we have quite a few as well. Our Student Senate recently volunteered at the food pantry at Wood Intermediate last Saturday. Our robotics team, known as the Combustible Lemons, has and will be volunteering for the next few days at Wilson Elementary. They worked with and tutored the younger students and are a part of the first LEGO League robotics team at Wilson, so that is a very good thing for them. Homecoming, we had that about 2 weekends ago, I would say. It was a really good turnout. We had over 400 students, and it was quite a really good time at the River Center. So great props to the planning committee for that. 4 of our rest students were recently selected to be a part of the Quad City Youth Symphony Orchestra, which is pretty cool thing. And our cross country team won the city meet. So that's what's happened in the last 2 weeks.
Well, thank you, all the board members, student board members, for being here and giving a great report, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our showcase, Superintendent Tate.
Well, we have Hayes Elementary tonight, and Sarah Gott, I believe, probably will start us off. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. I'm honored to be here tonight to recognize Hayes Elementary School. We are proud to be a part of the Davenport Community School District and appreciate all that you do for us, just like these boys are showing you. Come on over, boys. We've had an amazing start to the 2017-2018 school year, and I'm just going to highlight a few of the things real quick. First of all, we are proud to be a school family, and we brag about that to anyone and everybody that we talk to. We are truly a family at our school. I want to recognize our school family that is here tonight. Any parents, students, staff that are here from Hayes, please stand and be recognized. Thank you for coming out this evening. We brag about being kind, safe, respectful, responsible, and being Hayes heroes every day. Some highlights for you for the start of the year. First of all, we have a brand new PBIS, Positive Behavior Supports System at our building. It has reduced referrals by 50% already this school year, and we're really excited about it. Feel free to step down and see it. We're really, really proud of it, and we hope it continues. Also, we want to brag about the United Healthcare and the Dream Builders Association that donated $20,000 to our school for a brand new greenhouse that our environmental club, which is called the Green Team, will be utilizing, along with brand new swings for our school, which our students really like. Also, we participated in the United Way Day of Caring. We had 20 volunteers from our community come and help beautify the inside of our building. And we would like to recognize two of the school board members that came and helped participate on that day, Richard Kluhl, former board member, and then Ralph Johansson, who both came down out of their busy time to come down to Hayes and be a part of what was going on there, which we really appreciated. We also want to take a moment to recognize some people in the room and in this district that take care of us on a daily basis. And you probably don't get to hear about it or see it, but we want to take a moment to recognize Superintendent Tate. He's already been in our building several times this year. He's always positive and looking for best practices in our classrooms, along with Associate Superintendent Bill Schnaden, who's been in our building. He was just there last week and gives us tremendous feedback and also not only praise, but next steps for us to get better. And even we've had Rob Scott in our building, the other Associate Superintendent, so we know that they genuinely care about us and want the best for our students. We also want to recognize some district people that are maybe not sitting in front of you, but make such a difference and make Hayes a priority. First, we want to recognize, and I'm so glad he's in the room, Mike Maloney, the facilities director. He goes out of his way for us with so many buildings and so much on his plate. He genuinely cares about every school in this district, and it's absolutely phenomenal. He and Dan Burlingame do the absolute best job. We cannot compliment them enough. We also want to recognize Sergeant Andy Nyrink. He loves and cares about our kids, our families, and he genuinely has gone out of his way so many times already for us this year, and he does a tremendous job. We also want to shout out for a couple other district employees, Sarah Harris, Tara Parrish, Joe Reagan, and Heather Harland for going above and beyond for Hayes Elementary School. And we also want to recognize West High School. They are our feeder high school. They've already come down with football players, the marching band, their spirit squad. They've all performed for our students already in the first 7 weeks of the school year. And I'm telling you what, Andrew Wright, he was already down at our school performing. And Andrew Wright's mom works at Hayes, but he came and spoke to our students in front of the entire student body last year. This kid is a superstar. You see him running all over town. He didn't even tell about the gifts he has. He just introduced himself and his family, but he is a shining star in our community, and I'm so excited to see that he's a board member. Tonight, we could only pick a couple of items to share with you and brag about our school, and I promised the students I would talk quick so that they could have the mic, but me talking quick is not always an easy thing to do. So I'm going to introduce one of my favorite people in all the world to talk to you about one of the 2 awesome opportunities that are offered to Hayes students in the Davenport Community Schools, thanks to volunteers that do not get paid for anything, but they just care about the kids in our community. So the first student that I'm going to have talk to you today is Jacobian. He is a 6th grade all-star at Smart Intermediate and a Hayes graduate.
Hi there, as Ms. Gott said, my name is Kobe Nelson Anderson. I am a 6th grader at Smart. When I grow up, I want to be a basketball player and a clothing designer. Last year, community leader Tracy White began a program at our school called the Well-Suited Leaders that I was a leader in. This program continues on this year. Students 1st through 5th grade dress up and present awards in front of our entire school at our monthly celebration assemblies. After the assembly, we go down to the cafeteria and meet with the community leaders about how we can be leaders in our own lives. The cool thing about this group is that in an hour every month we could dress up and stand out in our school and meet with African American men in our country that we would have never had an opportunity to talk to at our school. On a normal day, all of the students in the Well-Suited Leader group are African American students, and we get the opportunity to talk about how we can make a difference in our own lives. Miss Gott, Miss Christina, Miss Samantha, and the Hayes PTO help pay for everything, and Miss Tracy runs the group along with Mr. Tatum, who comes and helps every month, who is from Central High School, and Randy Moore, president of Iowa American Water Company. Miss Tracy and Mr. Tatum and Mr. Moore, can you please stand and be recognized? Miss Tracy has followed us that graduated from Hayes last year and is working with us now at Smart. The boys at Hayes are already starting, and there are 28 boys in the group. Some of them are here with us this evening. This year, Miss Tracy is using the book 7 Qualities of an Effective Leader by Brian Tracy as our focus each month. We will be discussing vision, courage, integrity, humility, strategic planning, focus, and cooperation. Why is this important? Why do we meet? There are many statistics that stand out that are concerning. African American boys have lower standardized test scores and higher referral rates in school than others. We also have no American men at Hayes as examples, or African American men at Hayes as examples of positive role models for us. This has been an awesome opportunity for us all. Ms. Gott wants me to mention that I had no referrals when I was at Hayes at Hayes. Student and I had the highest Iowa assessment scores in 5th grade out of 65 5th graders, just on a side note. We are very proud of the Well-Suited Leaders group and thank Miss Tracy, Miss Christina, and Miss Samantha, all the male role models that have come and met with us, and Miss Gott. If you look on the screen, here are a few pictures from our meeting. Oh, they got copies on the sheets just in case too. Right. We invite you to the next Well-Suited meeting with the boys on Wednesday, October 25th from 8:15 to 9:15 in the Hayes Cafe in the morning. Thank you for your time, and now here's Miss Miser, 5th grade teacher, to talk to you about another opportunity at Hayes.
Hi, I'm Carrie Smiser. I teach 5th grade at Hayes Elementary School, and we have so much to be proud of at Hayes that it is really hard to get us to stop talking. But I'm going to talk about in our old reading series, we had a story. It was and I just got the book here, about jobs in space, and then it also, the next story is called The Ultimate Field Trip, which is space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. And I read this story for several years, and then I had some co-workers who were adventurous, so we kind of got together and we started talking about going to space camp, to actually taking kids to space camp. And it was a kind of a pipe dream, but we started working at it, and we ended up at space camp. It was quite an experience. The jobs we read about in this book, we actually got to do in a simulated space mission. It's really hard to to say small things about it because it was so amazing. Our kids, when we talk about jobs at school all the time, and they don't dream about being an astronaut, but I want them to dream about being an astronaut. So when we got this opportunity, our first year we took 21 kids, is that right? And then about 4 or 5 adults, maybe even more. The adults also got to participate. So as a teacher, I got to be a chaperone, and I also got to do everything the kids got to do. Very hands-on. Our kids, if you want to be an astronaut, you got to finish high school. If you want to be anything to do with NASA, you're going to probably have to go to college. So this was the best incentive I've ever seen to keep kids in school and to make them dream of reaching the stars. So we also went a second year, and the second year we took 45 kids and 11 adults. And so parents went with us. It wasn't all school employees, but we did a lot of fundraising, and we were able to cut the costs so a lot of kids could go. And we aren't done yet. We're going to try again next year or this summer. So we did the second year. A lot of the kids did space camp, but some that went before did an aviation camp. So we also learned about it was very Air Force like. So again, one of my boys would do, all he wanted to do was be in the Air Force, and he didn't want to go to space camp because that was stupid. But as soon as I told him there's an aviation camp, he got to working, and he ended up going to the aviation camp. So we also have Anthony. Yeah. Okay, so this is Anthony Franklin. I brought him with. He's been with me twice. He's done space camp as well as aviation camp. So Anthony, can you tell him your favorite thing about each camp?
Well, both camps were pretty interesting. My favorite thing about the actual space camp was the space mission that we did. They gave us all positions in the spaceship and out. I was a scientist in the spaceship, and for the aviation, my favorite part was the flight simulators, basically, because it felt like you were actually flying an airplane. That's about it.
Okay. And then I also have Stacy Smith with me, who teaches 5th grade at Hayes also, and she's going to talk just a little bit more about some of the things we did at Space Camp.
All right. And I know we're short on time, so I'll try to be quick. So as you can see, these are our team pictures that we have up there. Each of us have a crew trainer, which is kind of like a camp counselor. Very well trained people, know a lot about space, and if you can imagine how boring it could be to learn about history from a book, it is so much better to actually talk about like an astronaut suit and have it actually right there. To talk about going to the moon and have the moon rock right there. It's very hands-on, very cool. Of course, they both talked about the simulators. Some of the ones that we went in on are called the multi-axis trainer. This prepares astronauts for the free fall back to space. Moves in a bunch of different directions, and no, you don't get sick. They always take us on that one after lunch, and they do it purposely. Since your stomach stays in the center, you can't get sick. Your inner ear, you never go in the same direction more than twice, and so you don't get dizzy. It's a really odd feeling. I do not like rides. I am not a roller coaster person. Did not go in my first year. Second year, loved it. Really weird feeling. This one is a 5 degrees of gravity chair. It simulates how it is to live and work in space since there is no gravity. They have the picture on the far right is a task board, so they'll have to turn a screw or pound something in. And of course, in gravity, since there's no friction, your entire body moves. So they're spinning upside down and trying to do these things. They actually had to lock their feet in place. Another thing that they talked about, conducting a space mission. As you can see here, our mission control. Some of the kids actually get to dress up in astronaut suits. They're pretty excited about that. And the bottom one, you have our scientists. First year we went, they got to make bouncy balls. Second year, they had 4 different experiments they could pick from, and my group decided to grow crystals. How would crystals grow in different atmospheres? Another one, here are more scientists, more pictures. You guys are going quick. Building and launching a rocket, that's an important thing. Being able to follow directions and follow procedures as well, and then they get to launch it. Of course, they have safety equipment they have to wear. Fun times. All right, hands-on learning. So it's not just about space stuff. They have a bunch of different things that the kids can play with. The middle one, I know for sure, is the Coriolis effect, and the one on the far left, just for the kids to actually be able to see how the sun affects the Earth, and like the fact that it's shining only on one part of the Earth at a time. Being able to see simulators that show that is really cool. All right, in the history of the U.S. space program, there is a NASA room, which is the one that they're in the far left. So it has like all the NASA TV, it has pictures of astronauts doing things, and then the far right is actually right underneath the Saturn V rocket. Pretty cool stuff. You can see in the very far left, you can't see it, but it's there, is the moon rock that I think is so very cool. They talk about the history of rockets and the space program, not only in the U.S., but in Russia as well, and the rush for space. And then meeting and discussing space with actual NASA scientists. Really cool experience for the kids, because obviously these guys, very passionate about their job. And of course, artifacts. So again, my moon rock. Sorry, I'm really excited about the moon rock. You guys are going too fast. The very far right one that they showed was a robot that actually appeared in our this year's curriculum. It's actually in our small group experience. And the kids from our Space Camp presentation that we did were able to say, hey, you saw that. You know what that robot is. I'm like, yeah, I do, because I saw it at Space Camp. You're great memory. How astronauts live and work in space. On the left, astronaut bathroom. They always ask us that every year whenever it comes up in our program. And then astronaut bedroom, the fact, astronauts can't just float around in space. Competing in a Space Bowl trivia game, just to try to test their knowledge, see what they remember. And when we're at Space Camp, we're not just there with kids from Hayes. We are there with kids from other cities, other states, other countries as well. There's translators there. So just the multicultural experience for our kids is amazing as well. This is from Aviation Camp. They teach the kids survival skills. It's very much like basic training for a couple days. So they had to start a fire, had to scavenge for things. Flight simulators, of course, as you can see, lots of knobs and buttons. So for the teachers who like to have a lot of procedures and know exactly what they're doing, not so hot. For kids who like to press buttons and figure it out, they love it. And yeah, these are just kind of a collaboration of pictures from Space Camp. Thank you so much for letting our school present, and thank you so much for your continued support.
Is there any more, Sarah?
Oh, sorry, that's.
Oh, well, everybody, you
do
shouldn't
you
have
want
all
us
sat down. There might be questions or comments
Okay.
from the
Come on back,
board.
come on
That's
back,
all right.
sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Any comments from the board? Director DeSalvo.
Well, I want to get the names of these sharp-dressed young men that passed out chocolate. Bonus. Can you tell me your names?
My name is Andre.
Hi, Andre.
My name is the Avian.
Hi.
My name is Sean.
Hey, Sean. Are you guys all in the well-suited leaders group? Nice. Well, keep up the good work, because we're looking for good leaders just like all of you, and it starts right now, doesn't it? All the things you talked about that Colby was saying you studied, the strategic planning, all those things are things I do every day in my job. So keep it up. Start now, and you'll have it all down by the time you get out there. Love, love, love the Space Camp. That's just truly amazing they were able to do that for our kids. And I can't imagine the fundraising you had to do. So God bless you all for doing that for our kids, because that's amazing. Those are experiences they will never, ever, ever forget. So thank you for taking the time to do that for them. So really good stuff at Hayes. Great school. Thanks for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if that's it, then I would just say thank you very much, all of you. Thanks. All right, next is board reports. Are there any? Director Gosa.
I was just going to report, a couple weeks ago, I got to go with Corey Guy and a few of the gals from the curriculum department up to Des Moines for the Iowa Skills Trade Alliance. And Mike Rowe was the guest speaker, and what it is about there's a huge gap in employment now because all we tell these kids is you got to go to college, you got to go to college. Not every kid's going to go to college. Some kids are going to go in the trades and so on and work in factories and stuff like that. So basically that's what this was talking about. And then I did not get to tour. Des Moines actually has a high school that is geared that way. They have a division for nursing, HVAC, and stuff like that. So these kids are learning this stuff in high school to gear them to the path of an apprenticeship or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to try to make it back up that way so I can tour that school because it did sound really neat. So it was a great time, and it was good to see that and the lieutenant governor was there. Even though they don't think they can fund education equally, she believes that we have to start doing something to work with the employment gaps and stuff like that. I think it was a ridiculous number of jobs that are setting out there that we don't have the manpower for. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other reports? Director Mayfield.
Well, just to add on to that, I wasn't there, but this subject has came up many times before in several groups. And it really starts in school rather than in parents advocating. You know, if you look at the pipe fitter's son, the chances are great that he will go into pipe fitting. If you look at the dentist's son, there's a great chance he may do that, whether it's lawyer, policeman, electrician, because that's what they're exposed to. So really part of the key there, I believe, is letting our young people know that that opportunity is there. Every child is told about college at 5 years old, but they're not told about any of these other things that are possible. And so hopefully as they get older, and I'm talking second, third, and fourth grade, so they can recognize some of these trades, that they be exposed more to it. In my time, in our schools, we had electricity, we had woodwork, and I think the other was metalwork. That I don't think it was fair, but all the boys went through that at that time. Mr. Potts, you probably remember those days. I don't know why the girls weren't in there, but the boys were in there. They were in cooking. I know, but boys are in cooking, but my point is, it probably is something that all kids should be exposed to, whether girls or boys. And I don't think we do as good a job of that as we do talking about college. College is the highest form of education that we all seek, but there are others that may want to do other things if they're exposed to it. So we've been talking about this in different groups here in the Quad Cities for probably the last 10 years, that we're not getting enough of these younger kids to know what the opportunities are in the trade. So a big part of that, I think, is our schools. If we're not talking about it in the classrooms, how are the kids supposed to know?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Director Beck.
This is a little on the lighter side, but I got to go to the Central Homecoming Parade, which is my first homecoming parade in the Quad Cities. But McKinley Elementary hosted it, and it was done in the neighborhood around that school. And it was great to see all the neighborhood turn out and show support for the Central Blue Devils. And we got to see the dance teams and the cheerleaders, and the marching band was there. And so I think it was really great for the kids to see. And apparently the marching band also performed in the school that morning. And so it was really nice experience, I think, for the school.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to open forum. And tonight we've got 3 open forum requests. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We'll have 2 minutes for each speaker, and when you come up to the microphone, please give us your name and your address. And we'll start with Pastor Stanley Moore, followed by Todd Bernauer and Christine Hall. Pastor?
Thank you. My name is Stanley Moore, pastor of the Progressive Baptist Church here in Davenport, Iowa. I'm here with a...
I need your address also.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
1302
okay.
East 12th Street,
Okay.
Davenport, Iowa.
Thank you.
I'm here to, with a presentation of the Lincoln Academy. Tonight, I am just making a small utilization proposal. And we call it the Hope Center. Hope simply means helping other people excel. And our aim is to be a resource accessible to the community for training, distant learning, meetings, exercise facilities, and events. We would love to partner with the local school out program, the after-school program, which was successful, as well as our student at-risk programs to provide a location for their continued growth. We would also like to offer the site as a city meeting resource. In addition, long-term is tutoring students from K to 12, senior citizens day programming, on-site computer skill courses, distant learning, which is called cyber education, and I already have that in place, mentoring site for our area youth, event rental for conference, concerts, and celebration. Information sessions and meeting partnering with local police departments, social services, and health services organization. We would like to make our presentation for the utilization, hopefully, prayerfully, that we will be considered. The Hope Center is a new site offering information and services, giving people more access and opportunity to develop themselves closer to home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pastor. Next is Todd Bernauer.
Hi, my name's Todd Bernauer. I'm at 2148 Kohler Drive in Davenport. I'm the father of 2 daughters. My oldest graduated from Davenport Central and is a senior at Northern Iowa now. My youngest is a senior at Central right now, and she is on her way to UNI as well. I'm currently the president of the Blue Devil Youth Sports Program over the last 7 years. We started out by starting a girls basketball program on the youth level. Quickly noticed that there wasn't a boys program, a softball program, or a baseball feeder program, all at the youth level. Year later, after we started the girls basketball program, I met with Clyde Mayfield, who was running the Blue Devil Youth Wrestling program. We set forth to create a youth sports program that umbrellaed the wrestling, football, boys basketball, girls basketball, softball, and baseball programs. When we set out for this, we had several goals. One was continuity. We saw that these programs existed before, they died, no one kept them going. So that was our number one priority, keep these things going and keep this in the community. Number two of our what we set out to do was checks and balances, a way to keep these programs financially responsible and to enforce bylaws, rules of our program, so forth and so on. And lastly, we wanted a program that was inclusive. We wanted everybody involved. whether they were able to pay or not. I wish I was here to brag about our program, although we've done a lot of good things. More recently, politics in our program have become rampant within the school district. It's gone all the way up to, I believe, Dr. Tate most recently. We've tried to follow protocol. More recently, they've asked Clyde to remove himself. He's been with our youth sports program for many, many years, way before he was a board member, and now they're asking him to remove himself within the politics that are going on with the school. I just ask you to look into it further, and that you should probably know. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Next is Christine Hull.
My name is Christine Hall. I live at 1309 Christie Street. I'm a mother of 2 children that attend Davenport schools. One's at Central and one's at Sudlow. My concern is the recent events with the lockdowns and the kids' safety. My daughter informed me also that one of the classrooms at Sudlow does not have a lock on the door, so they couldn't lock the door last week. That's about it. This is mainly their safety. That's a big concern, especially with parents that also have to be to work by a certain time in the morning and then get notified by their kids or, you know, by the news or whatever. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Christine. And thanks to all of you, Pastor Moore, Mr. Bernauer, Christine, thanks for taking the time to share your thoughts with the board. It is really important, and we always welcome this kind of input from all of our constituents. We'll move on to upcoming events. Director DeSalvo, would you please read those for us?
I'd be happy to. Note that the band spectacular that was scheduled for tomorrow has been postponed due to predicted weather. It's postponed to Monday, October 16th, and that's due to an 85% chance of rain tomorrow. October 11th, from 5:30 to 7, there will be a legislative advocacy ice cream social here in the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. Everyone in the public is encouraged to attend. There's flyers on the table over there about it. We'll serve pie and ice cream, and we'll have our legislators here to visit with us, and we can sure talk to them, pick their brains about funding and how we get a bill written. This isn't on the agenda. It's coming from me directly. So please join us if you can. That is Wednesday from 5:30 to 7. October 23rd at 6 p.m., there's a regular board meeting here in the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. October 24th at 5:30, there's the LSEAC meeting. That's the Local School Improvement Advisory Committee here in the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. November 6th at 5:30, Committee of the Whole meeting here in the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. November 13th at 6 p.m., regular board meeting in the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. November 15th, Wednesday, is the UEN, that's the Urban Education Network meeting and at the Downtown Marriott in Des Moines. November 16th, Thursday, that is a Thursday, is the IASB, and that's the Iowa Association of School Boards annual meeting at the Iowa Events Center in Des Moines. November 23rd and 24th, we will be closed for the holiday. November 27th at 6 p.m., regular board meeting in the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. And November 28th at 7:30 is the holiday concert at the Adler Theater.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as is.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We're missing Director Mayfield. Excuse me? Well, we'll hang tight then for a little bit. I'll give him at least a minute. While we're waiting, I'll say something here that the superintendent has indicated that we may not have had a chance to talk with all of the student board members and to explain a little bit about your interaction with the board. We've got a lot of different issues. You have the authority to ask questions, to make comments. You don't have the authority to vote. And so there will be times where things are important to you, and if they are, you need to try to get my attention if you want to be recognized. Sometimes board members, sometimes I will see that you're itching to say something, and we'll say, oh, you know, do you have something that you'd like to share? And so I just wanted to make sure that you're comfortable in doing that, because your voices are really, really important to us. And so you might even try it out tonight if you feel so inclined, if there's anything that's important to you. So thank you, Superintendent Tate, for noticing that. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of the things that Director Hayes was indicating is that occasionally when one of the board members, you saw a few of them, had to read priorities or mission and vision statements, and they may call on you as well. Now, do all of you have Chromebooks? Okay. All right, and you all have access to the same agenda and all the information we have. And so you see that we are discussing. Okay. All right, then I think we're going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to call for the vote on the consent agenda, which was, the motion was made by Hayes and seconded by Gosa to accept the consent agenda as written. Call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by the administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of September 14th, 2017 through October 4th, 2017. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of September 14th, 2017 through October 4th, 2017 with the following voided checks. Check number 349748 payable to Hy-Vee Rockingham in the amount of $25.57. It was the wrong vendor. And check number 349785 payable to Power Graphics Incorporated in the amount of $286. That was a duplicate check.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Okay, call for the vote. Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Is there a superintendent report?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Davenport Highlights comes out every Friday, and I just want to point out it goes to about 17,000 people by email, and it's chock full of all very good, positive things that happens in the district, and when you go through it, it makes you just proud to be part of the district. And again, I want to point out that every week that goes out to thousands and thousands of people. I was in Mid-City the other day just making a visit, and as I walked around, I just reflected on how fiercely proud I am of what this district and especially the board has done to put that building together and to give those students a very respectful place to be educated. It just has made a world of difference. I keep thinking I'm in a community college when I walk through that facility, and the students respond accordingly. And again, I just wanted to remind you that it was decisions of the board, previous boards, and portion of this board that made the decision to do that, and it was a great decision. I was on a panel discussion on September 26th at the University of Iowa. It was a sociology class, and I've been invited to be a part of a 4-panel that was talking about public policy. Afterwards, Carol Wichkowski came up. Remember, she was a board member 2015-16. She's now a student there, and she said, you know, my time on the board when I was sitting there, sometimes I got bored, sometimes I almost fell asleep, but it was listening to those meetings that made her go into public policy, and that's what she's studying right now. So it's really great to see her, and I can remember she sat right there. Yeah. And then another student came up. She just was a dual graduate student. She says, I'm a junior. I'm a junior. I'm in a junior class right now, which is really cool. And I asked her if everything transferred. She said, everything except for one course, a new course they put in for diversity, and everybody will have to take that. But it was so glad to see a couple of our students. It was really, really, really neat. I want to pass out to the board a copy of my superintendent priority initiatives. Remember, I had those last year, and I made a report to you in August about where we were. And let me read them for the record. This is for Student Priority Initiative, school year 2017-18. They come from some of the projects left over from my last priorities, and several items that were mentioned by the board at my evaluation. First, overarching goal is to increase student achievement as measured by increased proficiency and growth on the Iowa assessments as compared to the previous year. Additionally, subgroups will increase proficiency and growth at a greater percent than the district average. And then I have several items under that. Promote accountability at all levels, champion the teaching and learning plan implementation, initiate an internal grow your own program to encourage and promote pathways to administrative positions, continue to support and guide the work of the Poverty Task Force, re-energize the emphasis on parental involvement to positively affect student achievement, write and execute a plan to identify and reduce the opportunity gap, work with the board to enact policies and procedures to encourage greater contractor accountability, provide leadership and assistance to assure that the district attendance program is successful, prepare an action plan to promote increased awareness of the building and skilled trades among students. Of course, this is not all I'll be working on. The dropout rate will still be prominent, but again, these are the major things that I'm holding myself accountable for. And that concludes my report for the night.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding approval of bid for ProStart kitchen improvements?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the lowest responsible and responsive bid of $680,000 to J.B. Robertson Construction of Davenport, Iowa, for the ProStart Kitchen Improvements Project at JBL.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I just had a question. Do we know, and this will apply to our other bids as well, do we know what the difference is in terms of why one comes in significantly lower than another, and any of the details about those?
At the time of bid opening, we are given quite a detailed breakdown of each contractor's bid, and we can compare item to item in their various schedules of values is what the documents, we call them, are. So yes, we can see an itemized accounting of what the differences are bid to bid.
Can you speak to what some of the differences might be? I guess I'm trying to get at the fact that maybe the lowest price isn't necessarily the best price if we're going to be asked to do change orders later on.
Well, in this particular case, we detail in plans and specifications what the required quality and so forth of all of the items are, and each contractor is therefore bidding on precisely the same scope and scale of work. And so according to the applicable procurement law, we must take the lowest responsive bidder. Now, what we can do is insert qualifications about what constitutes a responsible bidder, but there's only a certain amount of things we can do. But we do review that, and that's why the motion always says lowest responsible and responsive bidder. They must have been determined to be a responsible bidder, financially solvent, had a performance bond, or able to obtain one, so forth, and they must be responsive in that their bid corresponded directly to the requirements of the plans and specifications.
Director Hayes.
I'm wondering if there will be any transportation costs associated with this, or will students just walk down there?
It's definitely walkable, and with block scheduling, there's a large enough amount of time that's their plan is to walk.
Are there, I don't know if you know or not, but are there like any handicapped students in the program?
I would have to assume from time to time there are. And of course, we would provide accommodations wherever accommodations were required for disabled students.
Okay, thank you.
Director DeSalvo.
Do we have a, and I'm going to probably term this wrong, but a project manager overseeing this, or the whole, these projects as a whole? I'm getting at some of the issues that we saw at Central without having that project manager in place, or is that just you?
This is bid to be a general contractor project delivery method, and not construction manager, project manager.
Okay. That's
delivery.
Construction manager. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you. We'll go ahead and, is there any other discussion? Okay. Call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
No.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding the approval of plans and specifications for completion of the ASC at J.B. Young project?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve plans and specification for the completion of the ASC at J.B. Young project.
We will now hold a public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to ask for a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of the plans and specifications for completion of ASC at J.B. Young project as published in the Quad City Times on September 29th, 2017. Anyone wishing to speak on this project, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. John?
My name is John Dutay, 1110 East High Street in Davenport. As you know, I've been sort of tracking the progress on this retrofit, I guess is the best word for what's going on at JB. And the original approval was for $5.8 million, and it looks like and at that point, we did talk about what will the cost be for change orders and in other phases to be factored in, and it was pretty clear at that point that there weren't going to be any additional phases. So here we are with a change, about 260-some thousand, taking us up to $6.2 million. And I know that the $680 just approved for J.B. Robertson is coming out of a different fund, but it's still going into J.B. So that money would have been available for any kind of maneuvering around. So I'm going to count it towards this tally that I'm keeping. So now we're at $7 million. And I thought Director Hayes and Director Hayes, I keep calling her Dr. Hayes, Director Hayes and Director Beck asked really good questions I think it's great that we're going to save maybe $1 million on what we would have spent at Central, but are we losing something? I mean, do we just save $900,000, jumpstart the project, a couple of years and save all that money and not lose anything? And then also the question about, so the kids in this program are going to be walking or driving from Central up to JB for what sounds like a really great program. My nephew is a chef. He graduated from Central. He didn't participate in this program, but I know the opportunities available now to young people in this culinary arts. So I think it's a great program, and I support it, and I'm glad we're doing it at Central. But I just wonder about the immediate costs, financial costs, as well as some of the hidden costs. So, but I applaud the program in general.
Thank you very much. You're going to have to leave your little sign up so I can remember who you guys are. You're Larry? Okay, great. Larry?
What exactly is JB's building being used for?
We can't really get into a discussion here. This is a hearing. I think, though, since you haven't been aware, I'll let the superintendent answer that question.
Thank you. So JB Young essentially has 3 floors. The second and the third floor will be used for the activities we have in this building. So it will be actually the District Administrative Center. The first floor with the gymnasium and offices and the kitchen and what is now classrooms is the JB Young Opportunity Center. So we have several tenants in there, and the food bank, for example, and we have Boys and Girls Club, and we have a sports youth club, and the Safer, and 2 of our preschools, and 2 or 3 other tenants. So generally that's it. First floor Opportunity Center, second, third floor, we take everything here and move it over there.
Did you have more, Larry?
That was it.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other discussion regarding this issue, which is we're really talking on this hearing on the project? Any additional discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion by the board on this matter? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
I'm not sure where we're at here. I know.
Okay, we're on this is the approval of the plans and specification for completion of the ASC at JB Young project, 10.02 on the agenda. And this is,
No.
okay. Director Potts.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of the SBRC school budget review application for excessive LEP costs?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the application to the SBRC for modified supplemental amount for excess costs of the LEP program in the amount of $1,135,000, $1,135 and was it 235, I'm sorry, or as determined by the Iowa Department of Education Funding DE audit review in order to provide 100% spending authority for the 2017 actual ELL program costs.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
Could I have somebody explain a little bit about where this money is coming from?
Superintendent.
Well, the state gives us funded through our cash reserve because we don't have authority, and that's been the whole issue here. So what they do is say you can go into your cash reserve for that amount.
Anybody else? I just want to express that I'm still very, very frustrated with this because the state says, yeah, you can ask us for it and we'll probably give it to you, but maybe not. And I think that's a horrible way to run a business. And maybe they don't look at it as a business, but every year we have these costs that we have to go and ask the state for additional money, and we hope that they're going to give it to us. I don't know what to do about it. I just wanted to express my incredible frustration with it. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding the approval of the bid for Sudlow Cabling Project?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the lowest responsive bid of $196,775 to Davenport Electric Contract Company for the Sudlow Cabling Project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
Again, these bids are very different from one another. One is twice as much almost as another, and that seems surprising. It makes me wonder if we're going to be asked for change orders if we go with the lowest one.
What I'd like to suggest is that we have a series of contractors who bid on projects. Sometimes they really want the business, sometimes they've got too much business, and that really impacts the position that they take in a bid situation. I will tell you also that some of them are more familiar with buildings than others, and so when they're looking at a building, they go, I know how I could do that job a little cheaper, and so they're able to give a better bid in that case.
Any additional discussion? Director Gosa.
I'll just throw this out there to kind of help you out a little bit. Tri-City Electric is huge, has a lot of overhead. Davenport Electric, not as much. But I'm very, very surprised that Rock River Electric, that's like a 5-man shop, is almost double. And I know they do a lot of schools on the Illinois side, so it does get frustrating, you'll see. I mean, we do this all the time, and they probably will come back with change orders. So just chalk that away in your notes, and we'll talk about it again.
Any additional discussion? Okay, thank you. We'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to discussion items. First up is use of the JB Gym and district facilities by the Central Youth Program. This was asked for by Director Mayfield. And I don't know, Superintendent, do you have anything you want to start with, or should we ask Director Mayfield to open it up? Director Mayfield, you want to open that discussion?
I'd like to preface that with a little history about myself first, if I may. I've been living here, of course, in Davenport all my life, practically 60 or 65 years. And I attended Davenport schools myself, my wife, and all my kids. We've been basically bound to Davenport schools. And I myself have a dedication to Davenport schools that I've been working within the schools for 40 years. And I'm not talking about getting paid to do what I do in the Davenport schools. I do it for the love of the community and people that are here. I get nothing else out of it but the satisfaction of helping others. So what I see happening disturbs me a little bit, but at the same time, I understand that some people that are doing what they're doing because they feel it's in the best interest of the Davenport schools. And I just disagree. Now, the question is, I've been pro many things for Davenport schools, but I've disagreed with many things that have happened in Davenport schools. And in that disagreement, that may be with a board members, some board members, it may be with a superintendent or some superintendents. I mean, you got to stop and think. I've spoke to every superintendent for the last 35 or at least 35 years that has been here in Davenport. I've actually come and sit in their office and talk to them. And I ask what I think are the important questions. What are you going to do to change the situation that we have here? So it's not as if I become a board member all of a sudden. I think I'm wielding greater power than I ever have as a citizen of Davenport, a community member that is concerned about our kids. So I resent it when anyone says that because I'm on the board, that I'm trying to run things now. I am not running anything, but I am concerned about what happens. And when it is said to me in any fashion, whether it's insinuated or actually directly said, that it's inappropriate for me to care and to say anything about what's going on in our schools, it makes me very uncomfortable. Because even as a board member, each and every one of us have a duty to speak up about what we're concerned about. In any way, you should not hesitate to do that. And it should not be said that you're trying to run the schools because you have concerns about what's going. Is the board table the only place to do that? I don't think so. I've always tried to go directly to the head of wherever I think I can get the answer. If that's the principal of the school, I go there. Now, we're not talking because I'm on the school board. I've been doing this for at least 35, 40 years, going to the authority that I hope can help the cause and change what the problem is. When we had problems over here on the playground, I didn't just come to the board, I tried to follow the process. You go to who's in charge. You go to the principal first. Principal doesn't solve it. You take it to a board member or you take it to the superintendent. And you know, if that doesn't solve the problem, then you take it to the board. That's sort of the process that should be followed. But for some reason, I've been insinuated, and it has been insinuated, and I think some of you have the documentation, that it's improper for me to question. Maybe I'm not named specifically, but I think any board member here that has an issue should question and state their opinion about what it is or what hopefully could be done about it to help solve the problem. So, as I said, I've been working with students and young folks from the Friendly House, Lydia House, United Neighbors, Central and East Little League, which you just heard a little bit about a few moments ago. Coached at JB for 14 years, volunteered at JB. I've been involved in some capacity at Central High School for over 30 years, and that's not including when I went to school there or when my kids went to school there. I've always been involved with the schools. The reason that I'm on the board is because there were community people that were concerned, and they wanted someone to represent them because they did not feel they were being listened to. Now, that's another perspective. See, we got to honor people's perspective because that's their opinion. Because we can pull out the chalkboards and all the stuff to show that we're listening to everybody. But the question is, do they feel that there's the reaction to what you're hearing from them? That's part of the reason I'm on the board, is because those people say, we want representation. So that's what I'm trying to do, is represent those that helped bring me to the board, that elected me here. What does that have to do with JB? And we're talking about the gymnasium. You know, as I told you about my involvement over the years, I've also belonged to many groups within the school system. And one of those groups, I've seen a need for many years of getting kids involved. I've even heard that come from this table since I've been here. Get kids involved. So you know what? There's some kids that are always involved. Every single one of you people that I see sitting up here, excuse me, hope it didn't hurt your ears. Every single one of the people I see sitting at this table, I guarantee your kids are involved. I don't even have to question you about it. But you know what? I know so many kids that are not involved. And those are the kids that I'm concerned about. When you see me sitting here talking about education and what's good for all the kids, I'm not talking about my kids. My kids have whatever they have, they're out of here. They're done. I'm concerned about those other kids here. So what does that have to do with the JB gym? I have a letter here. Last year when I say we, I'm talking about Davenport Central Youth Sports was using not only the gymnasium at Central, but we were using it at Sudlow as well as using it at JB. For some reason, they were giving that to an outside entity. I'm talking about JB's gym, and we're talking last year. It continues this year, but last year. And we were not included. And when I say we, I'm talking about Davenport Central Youth Program. And we had been using that gym for the 5 to 7 years that we've been in existence. I think everyone knows gym time is very short in the district. Everybody wants a gym. The schools don't have enough gym space. Their scheduling is really tight. Well, last year, as this letter will attest to, if you could pass them around, that we at one point, the discussion was there that we were not going to be able to use the JB gym. And so naturally, I did the same thing that I normally do. I go and I talk to the people that are running it and ask, why isn't Central going to be able to use the gym? It was assured that Central, as you can see by that letter, that would be able to continue to use that gym. And if you look at it specifically, it says it was now being changed to a semester by semester process. No longer can we look forward to year after year after year of using that gym. And it was stated there, and I've seen that, and I really didn't think much about it because we've always used the gym. There's just not enough space at Central. When you're talking about 9th grade, 10th grade, our varsity, and then you're talking girls sports, you're talking boys sports, there is just not enough room at Central. And so it's really appreciated when we could use JB Gym, when we could use Sudlow's Gym. I think there was maybe one other elementary, because, you know, when we have many of our kids are 3rd grade, 4th grade, we can put them in a small gym. But for the high school kids, or close to high school, I should say, for the 7th graders, 8th graders, 6th graders, it's better to have them in a full-size gym that we have at Central and that we had over here at the junior high schools. Well, it was settled for last year that we could continue to use the gym. So the process usually for using the gym is you don't register or you don't ask for the gym until August, because our AD usually slots our time in the different schools. Well, this year we were not scheduled at JB, and I asked the question why. Well, there was something printed later on that said why, but let's take us back to when this actually happened. When it actually happened, we're like, where are we going to put all these kids at? Because there really isn't adequate. Now, and when I say kids, keep this in mind. The girls' sports, I think, suffer an injustice. Because usually, and I'm going again by my experience and my opinion, so you might see statistics out there and everything else to say it's fair, but I'm there with them. I'm a part of the process of what's going on with these kids. I'm not sitting someplace else making those decisions. I'm part of the programs that are working with these kids. And unfortunately, there isn't enough space. And the girls suffer many times because of that, whatever the girls' sports are, whether it's volleyball, basketball. They suffer. Not to say the boys don't, because we don't have the room, then it has other repercussions down the road because we don't have the space. So anyway, we end up that we're told this year that the gym at JV has been given to an outside entity. And it's no longer accessible by Central students. We're going to do it for the neighborhood. I don't know. We have had for 5 years an organized organization working with kids that come from all over this neighborhood. And this is in association with Davenport Schools, not outside, not someone else that has a business for recreation or basketball or something else, and they run their own for-profit. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is people that are volunteering their time. Many volunteer and give money of their own. But I think the most important element is time, because you can find money someplace else, but you're not going to find any more time. So I value those people that actually give their time. Well, we can see the results of that program. I think you all read in the papers, and I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, and I know the gentleman that just spoke up here, Todd, he will not say it, but you look at Central's programs and how they've improved over the last 2 or 3 years. And that's because those kids that have been in this program starting 5 to 7 years ago, they've made a difference. They made a difference because they started out early. Some of them, I'll say, was only in there for 1 or 2 years, but they were there. But now there's even more of them coming. And the big thing is you can see the results when it comes to the programs at Central. Whether we're talking football, you know, I haven't even heard it mentioned, and I thought one of these folks from Central would say it, that we had a young man, and yeah, he'd been part of that program too, that actually gained 407 yards, set a record for the Quad Cities in football in yards. I haven't heard that mentioned. Maybe that was something they just skipped over there. But my point is, this program that was created for youth over 5 years ago is paying dividends now. It's making us, we sit here and talk about when people come to the Quad Cities, they look for a winning program for their kids. We have many programs all over Davenport that are winning, but never have I seen such change at one school as I've seen at Central. And I'm talking about in our major sports. I'm talking about basketball, football. Volleyball has always held its own. But those are directly contributed. We've always had good baseball. But we've always had good feeder systems to bring baseball players in, which I'm not saying the sports program did all that, but they joined the youth sports program because they felt it was worthy and it would deliver. So after we have all this success and it has proven itself, the program was given to a gentleman to run, and for the first time this year, for the very first time, they're cutting students, or excuse me, they're cutting players for basketball. Never have we done that before. In its existence, we've never done that. You know why? You know the kids that get cut when you start cutting? It's the kids that aren't that good. It's the kids that don't have any parents involved with them. It's the kids that have no place else to go. That's why when we started the program, we said it is essential we have no cutting. We want all kids to have this opportunity. True opportunity is being involved with it, not being able to put in an application and try out and say, you're not good enough. Go find a place somewhere else. And that's basically what's happening now. But that's another issue that has to be dealt with. But the reason, one of the reasons given is we don't have enough gym space. That's part of the reason we're cutting kids. Well, is there gym space available? Yes, there is. Where's it at? Well, we have space right here at JB, which has been utilized for over 5 years. But now that we're giving it to the community, to a organization ran by someone who has a profit organization and has a nonprofit organization, that those kids around here that we used to encompass all of a sudden, some of them are out of this program down here at Central because we don't have space. We have the space, but we're not allowed to use it. I have a letter here. I want to say, could you help me if it's from you, Dr. Tate, or is it from one of the, the letter explaining why JB will not be available?
Is it the email that I sent?
Yes. Well, I consider it a letter, email. Maybe that's, you know, I'm old school, so. And there's something that disturbed me. I was talking a little bit earlier, is that JB is not going to be available because we're giving JB to the community for community programs. Now, we're talking about the gymnasium. You know, at one time, we had basketball outside. So I am really glad to see that we now have supervision for the kids inside. Because a couple of years ago, I can remember when we had 82 police calls over here. And a large portion of them was right outside because the kids had no supervision. So I'm glad to see there's going to be supervision. My big problem is that it's now taking away from a successful program that was running at Central because that gym is no longer available. It bothers me even more when I'm not supposed to say anything about it. And if I say anything about it, I'm interfering with the administrators and their job. That bothers me. Well, if I don't say and ask for their help, and I do ask for their help, and I don't agree with not allowing us to use the gym, am I to just say nothing? Because I was involved. Probably if I look around, I was involved before many of those administrators were here. But yet, I'm not supposed to say anything. When I see something being harmed, or should I say I have a disagreement with, it's my opinion, and I'm told, in essence, I shouldn't be interfering because that's the administrator's job. What are we here for, the board? For the administrators to make the decision and we give it the rubber stamp. That's my impression if I don't speak up. And that's my reason for speaking up. Because I know a lot that goes on in this district, and I don't bring it to the board every day of what I don't agree with. I try to be pro instead of just negative. But some things are so glaringly wrong. When we have programs that, we have this statement of mission that we're working for all kids and we're going to help all kids, and then we have the opportunity to do that and they're cut. No one at this table did that. But what I am concerned about is that part of the reason why it was said, at least far as I know, is we don't have the room. We have a gymnasium, but we choose to give it to someone else instead of our own programs, homegrown. No one's making anything on it. Everybody who's involved in this youth program are volunteers, and we choose to give it away. There was no way. I would love to see, I shouldn't say there was no way, but I would love to see that they could both work it out and be there. But I do not believe that it is appropriate that our schools, and I think I've read this too, that when in order of use, our schools get to use it first, and then programs that are aligned with our schools, whether we're talking Dad's Club or youth sports, would be next in line. But in this case, they decided since it's a whole entity within itself, I guess, I don't know. But Davenport Schools still own it, far as I know, and they still have control of the gyms. I don't quite understand why our programs aren't allowed to use it at all. And when I say our programs, I'm talking about programs that have been using that gym for the last 5 years, and now it's been decided that someone else can use it with the very same type of sport. See, we've been trying to build alliances with our community, with our parents, with our kids. Dedication. There was a time that when a kid was in 3rd grade, he looked forward to going to West High School. He looked forward to going to Central. They would show up at the basketball or the football games or whatever it is, because they started to love those schools from the very beginning. We know that there's no better way to help kids in the learning process than have them involved. We know that. We've discussed it here at this table. how many of those kids are not going to get to be involved? Of course, you could bring in an outside entity and say, well, look what we've did. We've made sure that Joe over there can take those kids that get cut and he can create a team. But we have an established system that we know now that has been successful, and we choose to give it away anyway. No. Keep in mind again, I am not trying to run the school system. But there are things that our school system is doing, and I say our school system because someone's making the decision that hurt kids down there. Because I see them. See, I don't live out in the Bronx. I don't live in Bluegrass. I don't live any of these other places. I live right here where these kids are being affected every day. That's why I speak up for them. I know the effects that this program has had for our kids. So I'm hoping that it can be discussed in depth. You know, you hear many things that go on. For instance, when we normally wait for our start time till August, and that's when you apply for it. If you look at the sheet that you received, the process is totally new now. You know what? I'm at the board. I'm dealing with youth sports. I know nothing about when that new process started, whether it started a week ago, whether it started a month ago. I know in talking to the president, he knew nothing about it. I did know this when actually we followed the normal process, and that process would be in August. I would say it's school due. That's when you actually apply for the time you want for the rest of that year. We tried to apply as we normally do through the AD, and this time the AD came back and said, I don't know. Well, being very patient, don't push, just ask again, wait a couple of weeks, month, ask again. The answer was, I don't know. I say, and I didn't see this till 2 or 3 weeks ago, it could have been done a month and a half ago, that we now have a totally new process, but those teams that were involved in that were not notified of that process. But I had a paper that was issued to me that showed that we have an entirely new process now. If not a new process, at least a different way of doing some of the program than it has been done before. School due was not mentioned. And so now, here we are in October, and I asked for this meeting 2 weeks ago because time was getting close and we don't have the gym space, and we're not hearing anything about it as to what we're supposed to do. Well, finally did get a letter in this past week, or email. Let me say that right. I call them letters. I guess we're using different terminology today. That says, and spells it out. Each of you got the same letter. That this is the process that's going to be used now, and that gym over there is not going to be a part of it. And the worst part, again, is I'm not supposed to be sticking my nose in it because I'm a board member. And the people that are supposed to be running this are the administrators. That's who we've given the priority to make the decisions about this. But even the people that are running those little programs like the Davenport Central Youth Program, they were not told anything except no every time they said something or asked. I'm amazed that we had 3 ADs that was told, 3 ADs that got together with, I can't say which administrators in the upper echelon. I don't know if it was assistant superintendents or the superintendent himself. I don't know who got together, but they decided between the 3 ADs that they had enough gym space. As far as I know now, I sit on the board, but I don't attend to it every day when it comes to Davenport Central Youth Program. I'm not there. But as far as I know, that president was never contacted by the AD or ADs and asked if they had enough space. Asked that specific question. Do you have enough space? So when that decision was made by these 3 ADs, I have to question, how do you decide that you have enough space when you didn't ask all the people that are actually making that happen? The main guy that's running it. How do you come to that conclusion that there's enough space when you don't even ask him? It's just decided arbitrarily. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I will. Maybe I shouldn't say arbitrarily because it could be decided by those 3 administrators in their eyes, in their opinion. There's enough space, but I don't know who they talked to make that decision. And of course, you know, as I've said before, I'm not supposed to be down there digging into the details to see the what and why. But people bring me information all the time without me asking. And that's why I bring it to the table to ask. I'm hoping that it's not just rhetoric when we say our schools are working for all. Because it's so easy to say. And you know what? With time the way it is, and you don't get that time back, it is harder to do. Now, that's not saying anything negative about our teachers. It's not saying anything negative about our parents. Because I have to say that because when I say these things, I get a letter in the mail or an email saying how terrible it is what I'm saying. In my eyes, and if I may have an opinion, I see these things differently. And I respect others' opinion. Doesn't mean I agree with them, but I at least respect them. So what I'm asking is it really, do we really mean what we say? Because we know the kids are involved. We know the kids that are involved are more successful. And you know what? I know that we were providing an opportunity for many kids to be more connected to the schools, more connected to the school in this area, which is Central, by having a no-cut policy, which we've done up to this year. And one of the main reasons that was cited was that we are having a cut policy is we don't have the room. Now, does that mean that this other program cannot exist? Of course it's going to exist. They have a gymnasium that's 3 times bigger or 4 times bigger than the gymnasium over here. They don't have the kids that we have down at Central or in this neighborhood that want to participate. I hope when we say our schools are for all kids and we really want to change the dynamics of those that we feel do not take advantage of the opportunities, we need to give them the opportunity to be successful at something. I am not so much about the sports as I am about the educational component. But I know kids that are involved, it will help them with their attention to move into what is really important. To participate, to work hard, to suffer defeat, to win. It's a lot like life is. And the kids that need it the most, we're going to say once more, it's like I believe that school over there, the kids that need it the most don't have that school in their neighborhood. They got to go other places. I say the kids that need it the most. My kids don't need it. I could send them out to any schools. But the kids that need it the most, they don't have it there. The kids that need the sports the most, at this point in time, we're talking about those kids can be cut. And again, I had to reemphasize, the point is that without the space, I don't know if it has any validity that those kids can't still play in that same space. But we have never cut. The person or people that are in control of it this year, they say that's why they have to cut, is because they don't have the gym space. We have gyms, but we're giving it to someone else because our kids in the Davenport schools here don't get the benefit of it in their neighborhood to make it easier for them. As you know, if you're coaching, half the time you end up taking those kids home. It's a big difference taking them a few blocks or taking them 5 or 6 blocks than to take them a mile or two across town. That's just what I learned because, again, I am not one that just makes decisions about kids. I am with them day in and day out trying to help them. And again, I'm talking about my opinion and what I do. Do not insinuate what other people do or don't do, but I know what my commitment has been. I know how much time I've put in, and I know how much time many of our other volunteers have put in to make that successful for these kids. And affordable. That's just another issue. Because many people have contributed even to make it affordable to those kids. That's why we could do and not have and have a no-cut policy. I thank you for listening, and I would welcome any feedback as to how we can help those kids. I just don't think the solution is to say somebody else can take those kids when we have a system within our school that can actually, and has up till now, been able to do wonders with those kids. You know, I relate it directly to those new people that are coming into town and they ask what schools to go to. Central, West, North have excellent educations. But I guarantee the ones that are winning in sports, you know what they're going to say? We are a sports-oriented society. And it's sad, isn't it? That sports take precedence over education, the quality of, and the content of. But that's real life. That's the way it is around us. What school you want to go to? Oh, I know where you should go. You should go over that place next to Davenport. Because, man, they are tough when it comes to sports. It's amazing what they can do and have done. We are building that at Central. We're right on the cusp of it. But you know what? All it takes is a few things to get in the way to slow it down and stop it. And I know that's not what we want. But I'm looking at the consequences down the road, not just what's happening today. Because this program's going to do good for the next 2 or 3 years. You're going to see that. Those kids have already been through the system for the last 5 years. But if we do not keep making it available to all kids, it's going to have its repercussions down the road. And I know and believe that that's not what people here at this table want. You want to see us successful. I think it's just the beginning, because I think it will go from Central to our other schools in other areas. But this is just one school. I can only give you the experience I've had at that school. That is not to say anything negative about any other school, because that's the next thing that I'll get a letter about, is you're talking, putting down the other schools. I'm not putting down any other school. I know what's happening at that school, and I want to make sure it's not compared to the other schools, whether they can or cannot do. I thank you, and if there's any questions on anything I said, I'll be glad to address it.
Well, thank you for your introductory remarks. Before we get into a discussion, though, I must say that during all of this time, I took at least 2 pages of notes. And you mentioned a number of things that seem to be really bothering you. And I was wondering if you could, in 1 minute or 2 minutes, answer 3 questions just to clarify your position.
Sure.
First, and this is part of what you, in your opening remarks, you talked about the problem. And I thought, what is the problem specifically? Because, like I say, you mentioned an awful lot of things,
Mhm.
and there must be a priority. Now, hang on. Let me ask the other 2 questions. What is the solution?
I can deal with one question easier than I can with all 3 at the same
Okay,
time. If
then can you
don't mind, would you
can you
give me one question at a
succinctly,
time?
in like 1 minute or less, tell us what the problem is?
The problem right now, the problem that we're here to address is the use of the gymnasium over there.
But the use of the gymnasium isn't a problem. What is specifically? What's the problem?
That is a problem. It's not a problem to you, but it's a problem to me and many of the people that have been using it in the past.
Okay, I'll accept that. What is the solution from your perspective?
Well, number one, if you look at the priorities that have been named as to who uses the facilities for the Davenport schools, number one is the school itself. Number 2 is the programs that are connected to the schools. Now, programs outside of that may use the gym, but those 2 are supposed to be the priority. In this case, this program, which is connected with the school, is being told they can't use the gymnasium at all. And they're supposed to be number 2 priority according to the rules. I won't say it's a policy, but according to what has been stated, that the programs that are connected to the school are to have the priority in that order. And programs outside the school, doesn't mean they can't use the gym, but they don't have the higher priority. Well, in this case, there's the gymnasium, the program that had been using it, which was a school program started for the school to support the school, has been told they can't use the gym.
Okay, and the last question that I would have, and then we'll open it up for discussion, is should the board be making this decision on what is the proper solution to this problem that you've identified?
Anytime there's a problem, I hate to throw this back at you, but who's the final authority in any decisions that made in this district?
Please just try to answer the question. I'm only trying to clarify your position so we can get into a discussion. If we're going to get into a philosophical discussion on board responsibilities and authorities versus administration, we could be here for another 20 hours. So please, can't you just explain whether you believe that the board should make this decision or not?
I think if and when the board sees something that is not right, they need to step in and correct it. I said anything. If you see that a decision has been made by an administrator that is harming our kids or our district, the board's duty is not to run things from day to day, building to building, but when they see something that is terribly wrong, it's their duty to step up and say something about it and ask the superintendent to solve it and solve it to their satisfaction. The board, I'm saying, because the board represents the community. That's how that's supposed to be. It doesn't mean the board has to run day-to-day operations, but when the board sees something that is not right, the board needs to speak up and say something. Now, whether the board agrees as a whole, whether the superintendent or the administrators agree, they're supposed to follow the direction of the board. I don't think the board wants the responsibility of directing things from day to day or the details of it. But when there is a problem, it needs to be solved. And if it's solved to their satisfaction, that's where it ends at. But it is, in the end, up to the board.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You've been speaking for just about an hour on this, and so I was going to ask whether you would, is it okay if we go ahead and open it up to the rest of the board?
Sure. Sure. May I say something on that?
Sure.
I learned that from you, Ralph. I learned to take advantage of the opportunity to say what you want to say and make sure that it's clear. And I appreciate you showing me that.
Thank you very much. It's 8 o'clock. It's been 2 hours. Does the board want to take a recess before we get into this discussion? We do. We'll take a 6-minute recess, and then we'll continue our discussion. All right, we're going to go ahead and get the meeting started again. So thank you for everybody coming back. I'm going to ask the superintendent to give a historical perspective on what's happening, especially with respect to these issues that have been brought up, and then I will open it up for board discussion. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. So when we were talking about repurposing J.B. Young, we, the board, had a vision of turning part of the building, and it turned out to be the first floor, into an opportunity center. So in February 2016, we conducted several hearing sessions to ask what the neighborhood would like to be in J.B. Young if it were a neighborhood opportunity center. We took notes, and then in May 2016, we sent out RFP letters asking for who would be interested. We had 15 letters of interest that were filed with us. We put together a scoring rubric. I did because it's my job to make a recommendation to the board. In August, September, a panel convened to conduct the review and scoring process. On November 16th, we actually reviewed or had individual interviews with people who had proposed to use J.B. Young. And in December of 2016, a presentation was made to the board about the J.B. Young Opportunity Center tenants. And since that time, we have been working out the leases. So we actually have leases with these tenants. And so far, we have the Art Legacy League, the Boys and Girls Club, Riverbend Food Bank, the Safer Foundation, the Quad City Youth Sports Foundation, Children's Village with 2 classrooms. The Davenport Boxing Club will have a lease to be determined. And as we talked about tonight, Pro Start Culinary, whenever we get their kitchen finished, will be in there. The Quad Cities Youth Sports Foundation is part of Beyond the Baseline. It's the nonprofit arm. They have something called Hoopin' for Change, and that's what they will do in the J.B. Young. Part of their leases, they've asked for the use of the gym between 4 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, December through April, and also July, and that's the way the lease is written. Other tenants have in their lease, for example, Safer will use the gym 11 to 12:30, the Children's Village 8:45 to 9:30, the Boys and Girls Club 4 to 7 until December. I have some, thank you. Until December, and then the Quad Cities Youth Sport Foundation would take over. Just some thoughts. I don't think that every member of the Blue Devil Youth Sports is from the JB neighborhood, and I don't think that, and I believe that the Quad City Youth Sports Foundation intends to service JB Young Neighborhood people. And I don't know. I haven't looked, but that's just a feeling that I have. You know, when this came out as an issue, and to his benefit, Mr. Mayfield brought this up in December 2016 and said, wait a minute, we've got people using that. And so at that time, I started asking, what will we do? How can we make sure that we accommodate everybody? And even most recently, I asked Mr. Scott, because, again, Mr. Mayfield was quite insistent, and he should have been, that we needed to make sure that every one of our feeder schools, wherever they are taken care of. I asked Mr. Scott, get with the ADs, look at every school we have, and to be honest, every elementary school wasn't being used in the past. I said it will now be. Every single elementary school, as well as Mid-City, will be used. And he put the athletic directors together, and they came up with the schedule that we see. And I said, I'm going to be challenged on the fact that there's not enough room, and we all know there never is. So it is true, there's never enough room for gym space. But I just want to ask, before your discussion, to ask Mr. Scott, because he was in direct contact with the ADs. Mr. Scott, has anyone mentioned to you through the ADs that any students would be dropped out of the program because of lack of gym time?
No, that's the first I had heard that tonight. We never had any discussions about, because of lack of space, that there would not be able to field teams. So eliminate, whether it would be 3 teams in a certain grade level or eliminate a grade level. I've never heard that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, unless there are other questions, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Before we continue with discussion, are there any questions of the superintendent to clarify his remarks? Director Gosa.
I guess I'll direct it to him, but Rob can probably answer it for me. When you talked about the ADs getting together, was that just the high school ADs, or were the intermediate ADs also there as well to give their input on gym space and stuff like that?
We are working with the high school. I was working with the high school ADs. We met on the 25th of September to put together what we thought would be a fair and equitable usage of all the gyms. We sat down, we talked about many different items, and I drew up a draft and shared it with them. I know most of the feeder programs were instituted last year by Mr. John Flynn, that they were supposed to be working through the high school athletic director. The feeder team was supposed to use them to get space for practice, and so I felt that was the most appropriate people to put in the right, put in the room. And so we came away from that. I shared the document with them. I then shared it with all the secondary principals. I then shared it with all the elementary principals after I met with Mr. Schnaden to kind of think of, we were trying to think of everything, and really we wanted to push out, as Dr. Tate said, was utilizing our elementary gyms. And because there were a lot of gyms not being used, a byproduct of this, and I'm giving a long answer of some of the other things that came out of the meeting, was we really know that the Mondays and Thursdays are valuable times for our feeder teams because the high school team plays on Tuesday and Friday, and nobody really wants to practice on those nights. And so we talked to Park and Rec and made sure that they knew that Mondays and Thursdays were going to be priority for the feeder schools. And so by doing that, we said the Park and Rec could use Tuesday, Wednesdays, or Fridays, and the usage what we need to use for them. And we want to work with them because they're good partners with us when we do, like we have golf teams using our golf courses and other programs. And so so that was a good feedback thing that came through our meetings. And so I felt really comfortable with where we were coming at and going through this point.
Can I ask one more?
Director Gosa.
You might be able to answer this one too. It's kind of directed towards what Director Mayfield's question was. Are there, because I know like our baseball teams use the gym during the wintertime too. Is there any conflict of like baseball teams taking away the basketball? Because, I mean, technically right now we're getting ready for wrestling and basketball season.
Yeah, I mean, all those things overlap. We have basketball, girls and boys. We have volleyball. We've got some of our indoor track teams, even at the high school, are using, so that takes away some of our gym space. So to say we'd ever have enough gyms, you know, that's, I don't know what ever enough would be, because we would give longer practice times. But I do think that when they sat down, I felt confident. I gave the ADs basically a very good opportunity for them to say, hey, that's not, they got to go back to their people and talk to their people, and they'll see this list and be able to say, well, why did they get more than this? And so I really felt like they felt comfortable going back.
Is it relative
Yeah.
to the superintendent's remarks? I don't want to get into a general discussion yet, but for clarification of the superintendent's remarks,
It
you can
goes
go
back
ahead.
to that AD meeting that they discussed. But I mean, I can wait.
I think it would be appropriate to get the rest of the board engaged in this discussion,
Okay.
if you don't mind
That's
saving
fine.
that question.
Yep.
Okay, are there any other questions for the superintendent before we engage in a regular discussion? Director Mayfield.
Help me, most policies actually come through the board, so I don't want to call it a policy. But when was the new directive actually sent out, as far as when the gyms were going to be used, not used, when the actual buildings were aligned with a high school? When was that actually done, and when was it disseminated?
Sure, we do, like you'd say, administrative updates all the time throughout the year. This one,
When was that done?
so that's what I'm, on the 25th is when we first met, as I said, and so September is when we first met. And so on that point is the first time that we ever had discussion. Within that short amount of time, today, is when I sent out the final draft to all the principals. Because I wanted to give enough time to make sure I was getting feedback from every elementary principal, secondary principal, of things that we were, just make sure we were considering everything, and plus we needed to work with the Park and Rec. So today, I'm sorry, I can wait. I just didn't want to interrupt you. So today, I, in the draft, also talked about, because at any point that we would have started the new draft, the timelines wouldn't work perfectly, because at some point we're going to be restarting a new draft. So there was a separate item sent to all the principals that shows the timeline. So for the next 2 weeks, all the feeder teams will have to reserve their gyms. 2 weeks after that, then all the DCSD, and then we would be open to the outside entity. So we gave that adjustments. They were told to send that out to their feeder groups starting today, because that was the final draft, and so we're moving forward.
So this was just initially sent out?
Yes, today would have been the first draft, with the final draft that was sent to everybody to share with their feeder groups would have happened today.
Okay. Well, maybe it would help in the future if the ADs let the people that they're dealing with know what's going on. Not that they haven't made a decision, but these questions have been asked, and they just totally turned down. They said JV will not be used. I'm talking about up until.
Yeah, JB
They said JV would not be used.
isn't being used. That was a correct statement.
Anything about any other schools that were going to be used except for the ones that we had been using. I mean, just a word of warning would have helped to say, hey, you're not going to be able to use this, but you're going to use this. Or we're formulating something, but there's been some deep discussion with the ADs, and the ADs have not mentioned any of this at any time. Not that it was in concrete, not that it was fully developed, but there's been a lot of sweat over this with directors of youth sports, with coaches, trying to figure out what's going on and what space they're going to have. And this is normally done in August, not in October. So.
Yeah, I would just say on their behalf, they've probably had this information for a week. That's it. My initial draft, they probably have only had that for a week. We spent a week turning this around because we knew the quickness that needed to happen so we could get these teams in there. They haven't been sitting on this information for 2-3 weeks by any means.
Well, we've been at this for about an hour and 10 minutes, and we haven't allowed another board member to say a single word. And if we're going to engage in, I asked for questions to clarify the remarks that the superintendent made. And if a board member is going to make remarks, then the remarks should be made to the board, not to an administrator. And if you have a specific question regarding the remarks that have been made, I'll allow it. Otherwise, I'd like to get the rest of the board involved in this discussion. One other thing I got to mention, student board members, we know that you're really busy. And we know that sometimes these meetings get long, they get hot. So don't feel awkward if you decide that there's something more important to do. If you got to get going, we certainly recognize that and feel free to go do what you need to do. Okay? Director Mayfield. But I wanted to respect, you said that you had. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion to the board. Are there any questions, remarks, discussion? Director Beck.
I think I'd like to try and summarize what's going on here. So, the Blue Devil Youth Sports is its own entity, right? And you have been told that Blue Devil Sports would be able to use the J.B. Young gym, according to this letter, right? Last year, in perpetuity, basically, okay? And then all of a sudden, you couldn't reserve the gym. And now you've gotten this scheduling change, but nobody told you it was coming. Is that right?
May I address that? Not only that, things that are taken into account. For instance, there's Mid-City High, right?
Mm-hmm.
These gyms down here are available to kids all around here.
Okay.
I assume that gym out there is available. Is that what that means? I don't know who to ask, Dr. Taylor or Rob.
Are you asking, is Mid-City a central feeder school for gym rental?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that gym is available out there?
Yep.
But here's the question. These kids that we have down here, how are they supposed to get out there? Because this is simply located, easy to get to. That's the greatest asset of these buildings being down here. Many of these kids do not have a parent to give them a ride. So we can make that another discussion, but we were not involved. People were not involved in it. Those decisions were made by 3 ADs, and I don't know who the other administrators are, but the hardships that are created for people that have to use it, it wasn't even discussed. And that's what I look at, because I deal with these folks every single day. And I know how hard it is for them to go way out there at night, at 6 o'clock at night, or 8 o'clock at night, go out there on Kimberly. It's just tough for them to do. And so that if we were involved in a discussion, we would have said so. But then again, when I say we, I am not talking about the board directing. But the people that are involved in dealing with these kids, they aren't even asked anything about it. The decisions are made behind closed doors, and the 3 ADs or ever how many decide this is the way it's going to be done. At least if it was proposed and let people get some input, but that's just my way of doing things. School district's a little different. They make the decision and go ahead and do it.
Am I responding to that? Okay.
No. The question was asked by Director Beck, and I allowed Director Mayfield to answer Director Beck's question. If you need more clarification, you can ask Mr. Scott.
May I? Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing that there are a couple different issues here. The initial problem was the Blue Devil Youth Sports, but you also say there's a problem with just gym usage in general. Is that correct?
The gym use, this is all started in this capacity. gym being used at JB.
Okay, but the issue was the central.
Other issues at Central, but that is not what I asked to speak about. What I asked to speak about was the use of the gymnasium at JB.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I believe our students may have questions, and I would like them to chime in now before it gets really, really late, because I have a feeling we're going to be here quite late. So, Shane, I think you wanted to say something.
Director Mayfield, is there for the Central Youth Sports, is there at the current time no gym space for them to practice at all? Or
No, there is some, but we have a lot of basketball players, girls and boys teams. We're always, and I think all the schools are always shuffling for gym space. That it's not just Central. It just, you hear so much about Central because I'm a part of that Davenport Central Youth Program. And so it's always, but when we're cutting it down, that space, by not allowing them to use the JV gym, then it makes it more difficult, because those students that live around here, I heard someone say those students are not from around here. I believe a lot of our students, or a lot of our players, participants, were from around here. They could walk to the school. Now, that may be changing a little bit with this cut policy, because many of those kids maybe were not the, should I say, the better players, or for whatever reason that they're cut. And I assume if you have a cut policy, it's because you're not good enough. That's just my assumption. And the way we did it, everybody could play. So that means you got kids just walking there from all over this area. They weren't coming from the west area, they weren't coming from the north area, they were coming from right around here. Well, if you take that, like Mid-City, as you just said, we included that in the area, these kids from down here are not gonna walk out to Mid-City. And we don't have the parents that have the cars to take them out there. So again, it's the population that we wanna serve. We wanna serve the population that is around these buildings here. And that doesn't mean that letting some outside entity do it, but hopefully let the programs that we have here serve those kids. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I would say so.
A little bit more than you asked.
Anything else?
Go ahead, Director DeSalvo.
With all due respect, Director Mayfield, we're trying very hard to understand the situation and the problem. And it took an awful long time for us to try to get our arms wrapped around what the real problem was. I believe I understand it now. But I think there's bigger problems or similar problems at all of our high schools. I appreciate your support and what you're doing for our youth kids at Central. But we have problems everywhere in this district. And for us to spend an hour and a half of time talking about this, when I feel this is something that we need to leave up to administration. That's what they're paid for. They're paid to make these decisions. We don't want to get into the scheduling of sports programs, in my opinion. I don't feel this is something that we should have anything to do with. I appreciate your complaints, and I think when you said you go to the top and you voice your opinion, absolutely, you have the right and you should do that. But is this a discussion or a problem that this board needs to resolve? I don't feel so. I feel that we have administrators in place that are taking those problems. If you have a problem that they didn't get the communication out soon enough, if you have a problem that they didn't go to the junior high or elementary or whatever the coaches, they didn't get to the right one, then get to your athletic directors and talk to them and say, hey, AD, did you know about this? Okay, we have a problem. We weren't communicated well. There's where the problem lies. I don't know that this board is going to be able to solve your issue or the issue of all of our high schools. It's not unique to Central. Director Gosa, I know that you have youth wildcat sport issues. We feel it. Everybody feels it. There's a lot of change going on in our district, whether it's where people are residing, the high schools are going to. There's changes going on right now in facilities and structures and buildings, but administration is trying to accommodate that. Were they late coming in? Perhaps. Did they realize there was a problem? Probably not until it was too late. But I think as somebody told me today, the genie's out of the bottle. We know there was a problem. We know that there was an issue. We understand and appreciate your concern, but this isn't a problem for this board to solve. It needs to be solved by administration. Could it have happened better this year? Yeah. Did it happen better? No. But now move forward. We've got to move on. We've got to find a resolution. Leave it up to them to do. We have a part-time AD that's being pulled in 10 million different directions right now. I can tell you personally, my discussions with him outside of here that I don't bring to this board, but I talk to him a lot. He's a very, very busy man, and he's working part-time, and he came back out of the goodness of his heart to help this district. So we have to recognize that and work with that. We don't have a full-time AD right now for this district, and I don't know that we ever will again. So that's why that communication has to line up very well again. I think we all learned a lesson here. Let's move on. Let's build from it. Let's learn from it, and let's figure out how we're going to move forward. Are you going to get the JB gym back? Mm-mm. We have leases in place. It's done. It's over. It's gone. Find another way around it. Find another way like they've tried. Get down to those elementary schools. They've offered you a solution. We're going to have to make it work. I don't think that kids in any of our high schools have a close proximity to be able to walk to their practices. They're all facing these problems. It's not unique to the mid-city area. It's everywhere. So that's my opinion on it. We've spent an awful lot of time talking about this and listening and trying to find a resolution when, in my opinion, it isn't something this board should have to be tackling.
No. Director Mayfield, excuse me. I'm trying. No, she was talking to the board. She was expressing her opinions. And Mr. Mayfield, this is a board meeting, and there are several people on the board that haven't had a chance to say a word. You'll have plenty of opportunity. We listened to you for 50 minutes in your... So please let the rest of the board speak. Well, I hope so. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Director Gosa.
Just for clarity, and I think Mr. Scott answered this earlier, the information is getting sent to the ADs. It did get sent today, and then they're going to refer it back to their youth sports programs, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then my other thing, and I've been waiting all night for this to get to this point, is I distinctly remember sitting right here when we talked about J.B. Young, and I asked about the field when they're going to make it a parking lot, if the feeder programs were going to have a spot to stay. And I believe it was Director Mayfield that had asked about the gym, and we were told that they were. And now, here we are now, that's not the case. There's leases in place, whatever, and I get that. I mean, you have a lease, and it is what it is. But I distinctly remember bringing this up when we talked about that parking lot going in. And everybody thought I was crazy. And then he talked about the gym, and here we are, how many months later, and it went down like that. When the problem was brought up, and I mean, I understand the leases are in place and everything, but this was brought up before, and I'm going to tell you this, being an elected official, if a constituent calls me with a problem, I'm going to bring it up. That's what they voted me in here to do. We're their voice sitting right here to bring their issues to this. That's what we're supposed to do. If you don't do that, shame on you. And I do work a lot with a lot of youth sports programs. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, and I'll still have young kids. I'll be doing it till I'm maybe not that old, but I just wanted to say that we did bring this issue up beforehand. I mean, I originally started with the football field usage, and then it talked about with the band and everything, and then we did talk about the gymnasium and stuff. And then, I guess back to my question to you, are they going to get a list of all, like we see here, the feeder schools? Because, I mean, like I was kind of talking to you in passing, I didn't even know about some of these schools that we were allowed to use, so.
Yes. I mean, part of it is utilizing all of our facilities, and that was part of our discussion is we didn't feel we were utilizing all the elementaries, and so that's why we involved the elementary principals. So we actually feel like we have more practice time available throughout the district now through this communication.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Hayes.
I too briefly remember that conversation that we had some time ago, but I'm glad to see that something has gone out and you're working towards it. If it just went out today, then it may be another week or two, but I'm glad to hear that a solution is being worked towards.
Anything else? Director Potts.
I just want to ask Superintendent, when was the meeting a year or so ago when the decision was made to have the first floor JB be community use? And secondly, what might be some of the constraints to people having access to buildings on the weekends?
As I said, February 2016 is when we started the listening session. So the board was apprised through the year, and it was December 2016 when the tenants were presented to the board. And the second question was weekends.
Constraints on using the building Saturdays and Sundays.
They can go to School Dude and request them just like anybody else.
Have more, Director Potts? Okay. Any other discussion? Director Mayfield.
We know that this was discussed long before now. And even the gentleman that was running it, Gary, when I asked him these questions, of course he didn't know. He didn't know that we were involved as far as the Davenport Central Youth Program. And this has been asked for the last 6 months to the AD that he's supposed to go to at the school down there and got no answer. I went to Dr. Tate, said he would look into it and see what could be done. Well, what ended up being, what you see right here, is that this school was left out because it was original. And call that solving the problem. It does not solve the problem for Central. It actually makes it even worse because we know now that Central cannot use a local neighborhood school, which makes it easier access for the kids. And that's basically what that's about. So, I think it's sad that we fall into that category of saying we're trying to help, but in the process of help, we do harm to these kids down there.
Is that it?
After going through all the processes that many people are pointing their finger and say you should do, talk to the principal first, talk to the ADs, and then you go upstairs and you talk to whoever you can on the higher level. And that was done from the ADs to Dr. Tate. I can give you other examples of the same situation at in the best interest is not always serve the kids. Might serve the school system, but it's not serving those kids that are affected for it. So thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Director Gosa.
I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Scott and the other ADs for getting together. I mean, this should have been done a long time ago, but I'm glad that it is now, and they're getting more schools involved. I just kind of want to point out here that North only has 6, Central has 7, and West has 10, but whatever.
I can address that because we had that discussion. Wood has 2 gyms, and so that's why you see one less school. And the schools that are farther west than us, because of the proximity of them, we didn't include those in. And so all the ADs agreed that Bluegrass, Buffalo, and Walcott would be nice to use, but we shouldn't put it in their quota.
Thanks. I was going to rub that into the Mayfields, but man, you really took the wind out of my sails now.
Director DeSalvo.
I found the meeting minutes the discussion of the green space parking at JB Young. I haven't read it, but if you'd like, I'd be happy to read it if you care. These minutes are from the meeting January 23rd, 2017. Discussion item, green space parking at JB Young. The discussion item was a result of a board request by Director Kluhl. Mr. Maloney started the discussion explaining that their design team met at the request of the Hilltop Campus Village staff to discuss proposed parking improvements being planned for the move of ASC to JB Young. They expressed concerns about losing green space and the playground on the south side of the building, which was occasionally been a nuisance with some bad behavior and loitering by teens. They suggested putting parking in that space instead of using green space. I don't know if this is where we want to go. Mayfield expressed concern about the basketball area and said it needs to be controlled, and also mentioned how many different teams and people use the green space at JB. He said if kids will be allowed to use the gym inside, this also needs to be supervised, and part of the solution could be to only allow kids to play basketball inside the gym area with supervision. Mayfield said he would appreciate this option being considered. Student board members expressed concern about losing green space for the youth sports teams. There was a discussion about the possibility of using the field at Madison, and Maloney mentioned the district owns 2 lots across from Central, which could be also explored. Johansson said he doesn't like the idea of reducing spaces by 12 or 14, and asked Tate that this needs to be decided. That was more parking. Yeah, that's probably not the right discussion that I was looking for, but sorry, I'll keep looking if you like.
That's up to you. All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Excuse me? Oh. Well, if there's nothing, I got a few things. And there's probably so much here that I cannot even respond. And I must say that a lot of the things, I hope that everybody out there realizes that the positions that have been posited are not necessarily board positions. So far, I think all that's been represented is individual positions. There are certain things that it doesn't appear that we even know anything about. The cut policy was mentioned several times, and yet the administration isn't aware of it, so it's being represented as a fact. And at this point, and it was represented as well, that the cut policy was a big part of the problem. As I mentioned earlier, I think there were so many things that were discussed tonight in the opening remarks. And I suspect at some point we're probably going to have a discussion on what board members' responsibilities are. And we may all have different perspectives. I will say that I believe that I have the responsibility of representing every single student in the district, and not just certain students in a certain area or at a certain school. I feel very, very strongly about that. And I think that that's part of a board member's responsibility at large. But that's just my opinion. There were remarks that were made with respect to had to do with board. Oh, here it is. The question was, what are we here for? And the the remarks that were made, the way that I captured them, and I hope I did it accurately, but the question was asked and answered, which was to listen to the administration and rubber stamp their decisions. I don't think that that's the purpose of the board, and I certainly hope not, because if that's the case, the board probably doesn't even need to exist other than that it's required by law. And I hope that the board members take their responsibilities seriously, and that we aren't just rubber stamping. There's a lot more to talk about here, but the reason that this was brought to the board by the agenda committee is that it was asked for by Director Mayfield. And there was a sense that there was a sense of urgency also to addressing this because of the timing with sports and with all of that. I think that it kind of draws the question that the board probably needs to deal with a little bit, whether it's here or at another meeting. But what authority does the board want to take with respect to what many might consider to be an administrative responsibility and decision? And the board can certainly overrule just about anything. They can overrule the superintendent even if he's simply enforcing a policy. And that's an issue that we've discussed in the past because of some of the difficult decisions that the superintendent has to make. The superintendent supervises, and I don't even know the total number now, but it's probably around 2,400 employees. And I think that the board has to at some point trust that the administration, the teachers, staff, everybody is doing the absolute best that they can. I believe personally that every one of us makes mistakes also. And I do too. And I simply accept that. But I don't think that the board has the time really to deal with this. And I think that some of the comments in the note from Dr. Tate, I'm just going to read the last paragraph. And it says, in my opinion, using board policy to schedule district facility space is the responsibility of administration. It is a slippery slope if the board begins to override decisions made by the leadership for day-to-day scheduling. If the board is unhappy with how the administration is handling scheduling responsibility, then policy can be changed. Alternatively, the board can assume the scheduling responsibilities. The latter is not recommended. And I agree with those statements, and that generally the board has certain responsibilities. They have fiscal responsibilities, certainly. They have policy responsibilities. I don't believe in and if you read the code, I think that the code does not specify something like scheduling district facility space for sports activities. So I think what I'd like is for the board to weigh in on whether, and this isn't a vote, this is just where are you as a person, and it's not in bringing issues like this up. Issues can be brought up, certainly, and any issue, every question, everything could be questioned, every decision, but with 2,400 people, it's hard to question everything. But I would like every board member to weigh in on whether this is something the board should go ahead, address through policy. Should the board let the administration deal with this? Where do you want to go? Do you want to have additional discussion on what board responsibilities are? I'm trying to think here how to do it fairly, because I want to give Director Allison and Potts the benefit of additional time, since you haven't been on the board very long. And so, so I'm going to ask in a different kind of way, and I think it'll be based on my recollection of how long people have been on the board. So I'm going to start with Director DeSalvo, Gosa, Mayfield, Hayes, Beck, Potts, and me. Director DeSalvo, what do you think?
Well, I think I mentioned my thoughts before. And I agree with Director Gosa. I represent the constituents that voted me into this office, and I represent every student, every staff member in our community. That's what we're here for. And I feel like there are issues. Of course, you're going to have problems, and people are going to bring you things to your attention. Your phone rings off the hook, you get emails, we get all of that. And I think there are ways to address problems, and I think they need to be brought to the attention of administration or an athletic director or a music teacher or whomever that may be. That's what we're here to do. But for this board to get into the practice of having to schedule gym space in our district, I think that is something that we should not have to get involved with. We have to rely on administration to make the decisions and do the job that they're paid to do. And I don't feel that that is something that should be decided by this board. If we don't like the way the process is going, then bring it to the attention and let's find a resolution and get it fixed. I think we've done that. We identified a problem. It's been brought to their attention. A fix is in place. Was it timely enough? Probably not. But a fix is in place. We're working on it. You have to be patient. And so in my opinion, this board should not be scheduling gym time for our students. I believe that that should be left up to administration.
Okay, thank you. Director Gosa?
As I stated before, I mean, if someone calls you with a problem or emails you, and you guys are fairly new, but it will happen, trust me. As soon as there's something on Facebook, you will get 20 phone calls and emails. But I mean, that's our responsibility, you know, and sometimes you fill out a board request so that those people know that you didn't just overlook them. I mean, and that's a lot of why you do some of this. So there is transparency, so they see, you know, hey, they brought this issue to me. I am looking into it and taking care of it. I mean, and as far as the issue we're talking about now, I mean, I'm glad it got brought up because, I mean, it is hopefully going to fix a lot of issues that are there. Now it's opening up more gym space and all that. So, I mean, it's been a problem for a long time, and it's getting addressed. I mean, I know you have to work the kinks out and stuff, so I appreciate you guys doing that. Personally, I would love to schedule all the time because my team would be in there all the time, but I wouldn't want to do all that. So, I just, you said you guys are working on making it fair and equitable and all that. So, I mean, I appreciate that. I do feel it is our duty to bring these issues up. And most of the time, I mean, you can ask the questions and stuff, but if you fill out that board request, it's right in the meeting minutes. And then if they need to look up that, hey, did they bring my issue up, it's there. Because people will call you, but you'll never see them out there. But they will call you all the time, or they'll have something to say on Facebook or KWQC's Facebook page or Instagram and Twitter. But they don't have all the facts because they're not sitting out there. I mean, John DeTay's probably been out there. Vera Kelly, that's about the only two I see all the time, and Dr. Brockington. Otherwise, you know, everybody else is. But, and it's they elected us to do this, so that's their right to do that. So, back to your original question, no, I would love that responsibility, but I think you guys are doing all right, Rob.
All right, thank you. Did I call on Director Hayes or Director Mayfield next? Director Mayfield. Okay, if that's okay, Director Hayes.
I must say I agree with both previous board members that said. I appreciate Director Mayfield for bringing it to the forefront and speaking for the constituents. Unfortunately, our main concerns are policy and budget, and it's neither. And I don't have the time for scheduling. There's quite a bit on my plate right now, so that's not something that I could do. But I would, I welcome the thought that it's being looked at And as long as everything is equitable, I'm okay with it as is.
Thank you. Director Mayfield.
Well, first of all, I do believe that our responsibility is to make policy. But some of us are more than just board members. I'd like to think all of us are. And wherever you live, I would like to think that those that are closest to you, you represent. Now, I represent all kids and all parents in Davenport. But I know what my next door neighbor is doing and suffering, is why I'm able to say something about it. And I'd like to think wherever you live at, that you know where what your neighbor is suffering and are much closer to it than I am, and be able to speak about that. I'd like to think all of you had lives before you came to the school board. And you don't have to withdraw from any of the clubs or associations that you had prior to being on the school board. It just so happens that what I've done is served kids prior to being on the school board for the last 40 years. And so I have a little different perspective as to who's being hurt by the actions that the school board takes, or that, should I say, you've given the administrators the autonomy to be able to make those decisions as they see fit. And when I see damage being done, from my perspective, my opinion, I will speak up and say something. And I would like to think that the rest of you will do the same thing, keeping in mind that we're here to serve the district totally, the Davenport Community Schools, not just one school, but all schools. But you know more about North High School because when the gym roof was caving in, you brought an issue to this board. But there's some that would say, there were some that would say that's administrators that should deal with that. You shouldn't say anything about it because that's beyond your policy-making rules. And you know as well as I do, it doesn't work that way. When you have an issue, you bring it forward. Doesn't mean that what you say is going to happen, but you got to let it be known that there's an issue there and that it needs to be dealt with appropriately. Will it be dealt with appropriately? We don't know until we wait. But then we may get the same complaint again 6 months from now, a year from now. It's hard to say. Because every solution that has been proposed, whether it be proposed by the district or whether it's being proposed by the administration, if they were always right, then we wouldn't worry about our students being non-proficient, because the decisions that we've tried to make were always for the good, but it didn't work out that way. And I've witnessed that for years. We do the best we can, we make the decisions, but it doesn't always mean that it worked the way we assumed it was going to. So, yes, I do know the role of the school board, but the school board does not know what's going on beneath them sometimes. And I think it's very important that each and every one of you let the school board know if you need to bring it to this table. And that's the only way to let others know what's happening. I think that's an important thing to do. So, thank you.
Could you, I'm just trying to clarify in my mind, I understand you're talking about bringing things to the board, but do you believe in this particular issue, is this something that the board should address? In terms of whether it's in policy or overruling administration or whatever?
I think if the first and most important thing is that the reason this came about is because I've been pushing this issue. And I didn't just push it at this board. I started months ago asking the right questions to the right people, and finally something has happened. I do not agree with what has happened, but I don't think anything would have happened if no one had said anything. That we'd be still dealing with the same chaos that we have. We'd still be dealing with being told one thing, like that letter said, that we would have access to that school, and then a year later, we can't use it at all. We'd still be dealing with that. Doesn't mean that we won't in the future, because policies change, or should I say situations changed. A year ago, we were told we would be able to use that. But to keep in mind, there's always an out. It said that it would be decided semester by semester. But you don't seem to look at those little details when you're told you're assured that you're going to be using that building. You just assume until the day they say, no, you can't use it. We're letting someone else do it. They knew that we were trying to use that building prior to a lease being signed. That issue was out there before the lease was signed. But once the lease is signed, what choice do we have? So I thank you, and hopefully I don't have to bring these type of things to the board, that they be solved by talking to personnel, administrators, principals, even down to the classroom teacher. If I have a problem with my kid in a classroom, I usually go speak to the teacher. I try to follow protocol, but unfortunately protocol doesn't always get it solved. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll just interpret your answer the way that I think you tried to answer. So, because it wasn't clear to me what your position was relative to this, but I'll just make my interpretation. Director Hayes.
Aren't you gonna?
Oh, you went already.
Aren't you gonna repeat it if you were gonna interpret it?
No, I'm not. Director Beck. Director Beck.
So I guess I would like to thank Director Mayfield for going through the proper channels, and I would like to express that I do have some concern that this was brought up a year ago, and by a couple different people on the board, and then it's just now being resolved. But I'm glad it's being resolved. I think it's appropriate that it's being resolved, and I think the appropriate people are taking care of it. Again, my concern is that it did seem to take a long time, and you feel like you were following the appropriate protocol. Other board members brought this up a year ago, and just now it's getting fixed a year later. But I don't think it's the board's job to schedule facilities to actually change this policy. But I can understand, I'm here to serve constituents as well, and if something's not getting done, then I should mention it. But I don't necessarily think that the board is supposed to fix this particular issue. However, if it hasn't gone, if going through the appropriate channels hasn't solved the issue, at least mentioning it here might help.
Okay, thank you. Director Potts.
I think that if we as a board start dealing with all these kinds of things, we'll have to bring sleeping bags to the meeting. When I was a principal, as I say, when I was a principal, I thought like a principal. And I loved it when downtown said, do this, and then just let me do it. I didn't always tell them what I was doing. You knew that. Delegation of authority is important, and I think the board's responsibility is to set the policies and delegate authority to the administration to execute those policies. Yes, we represent the people. We don't run in districts, we run at large, so we represent everybody in town. But we've, in the course of running for the board and going to a couple of meetings and some how to be a board member stuff, the term micromanaging came up all the time. Every board member, I'm sure, has their own piece of the pie in the school business that is their passion area. And we have to, as board members, we have to resist, I think, pushing that piece of pie all the time. And so I think that it's appropriate for the board to set the policy, not appropriate for the board to decide who gets to use a building.
Thank you. Thank you all. Our student board members have left. So I'll just say that the board, not that we have a finite amount of time to deal with things, but in my estimation, every board member spends about 300 hours a year voluntarily participating in board meetings, committee of the whole meetings, committee meetings, and there's more or less that we all participate in. I was just doing a quick calculation because we've been at this now for about 2 hours, and 2 hours over 300 hours would be, it'd be 2/3. Trying to think what the percentage would be, but it's almost 1%. It's 2/3 of 1% approximately, and and I do think that we have to be respectful, and we're going to talk about that in a minute as we talk about board protocol. But I believe that we have to be very, very careful in what we bring to the board, and I will tell you that I have 4 board requests already for tonight or from tonight. So I believe that we have to have the proper balance. Certainly we can bring just about any issue to the superintendent, to the board, and I think that because right now our policy, our precedence, not policy, is that anything that gets asked by a board member to be on an agenda or an information request is addressed by the agenda committee. And so any board member can ask anything the way that we've set it up right now. But I do not agree that the board should be dealing with this. I do agree that we should let the administration handle these things. We have hired the superintendent to run the district, and I believe we should let him run the district. We should give him direction. We should establish priorities, things like that. Okay, any other discussion on this particular issue? No. Okay, then we will go on to the last discussion item, which is board protocol. This is something that we try to talk about every year. How do we want to govern ourselves? And so I'm just going to, and board members, please, we still have to take a picture after the meeting. It'll only take, That's, I know. Okay. So I'm just going to read some of the things that we talked about last year and see, just chime in if you feel in any way about these things. So number 1 is board members volunteer hundreds of hours each year and should not be expected to use personal or vacation time to attend meetings. This has to do especially with people that have, say, jobs where you have to attend and where you end up using personal time or vacation time to participate in board activities. So it's just kind of a statement of principle. I'm seeing nodding heads. Director Gosa.
Yeah, I have to. I mean, all the time. Expulsion hearings, special meetings, yeah.
But what we're saying is that do we as a board expect that from every board member, that they use personal and vacation time? We had one board member that, as far as I know, they had used all of their personal time to attend meetings. I was unaware of that, but we were able to adjust our meeting time to try to accommodate that. It's just like, say, a statement of principle. Do we want to say, yeah, you're expected to be here no matter what? No.
Julie is.
Okay. Second is meetings that continue late into the night may result in poor decisions. The sense of that was that people are getting tired, cranky, frustrated, and that once we go beyond a certain time, like now we're over 3 hours, and oftentimes we have other meetings preceding this. We may have expulsion hearings, agenda committees, all sorts of other meetings prior to this. But again, as a principle, does that make sense? So we try not to go too late. Okay. Number 3 is times for the standing board committees, which are policy, legislative advocacy, agenda, and poverty, will be set by the chair of that committee. So the chairperson of any of those committees will go ahead, because they know better than any of us what our schedules are. The president will set the times for expulsion hearings, exempt sessions, and special meetings. Okay. Time limits. So this is where we get into a discussion. It says the time limit would be established by the board, could be modified by the board. The president will acknowledge the time remaining during meetings, may adjust the agenda, and all board members need to acknowledge the schedule and try to be considerate of the time available. What we have been doing, and you should note, does everybody get a copy of these? Is this, it is on board docs? Okay. So the board docs are indicating estimated times. It's to try to help us recognize what's going on, and if we're getting too late, whatever. And this is something that the board president can be more, the board president can say, hey, you know, we're running late. If the board would like that kind of reminder. So that is an incredibly touchy issue. We'll go ahead and address it right now because we address that every year. So why don't you go ahead and present your position then, Director Beck, on that particular issue of time limits and cutting people off?
Well, I don't have an opinion as of yet on whether we should have time limits or not. But if the board decides that time limits are important, then they have to be instituted consistently and across the board. No pun intended, sorry. Everyone has to know what the time limit is, and the president's going to have to say, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then cut people off if we decide to go with time limits. I'm not necessarily advocating for that.
Okay. Any other Director DeSalvo?
I would agree with time limits, and I think if we know in advance, so I've submitted a board request. I know, I look at my agenda prior to the meeting, I know my topic's coming up. I would have prepared statements and know he's going to hold me to 15 minutes, so I got to get my point out and get my things done in that 15-minute time period. And I think to stay productive, we have got to try to do that because we've spent a majority of the meeting tonight on one topic, and we didn't get to, well, we're going to cover everything on the agenda, but I'm guessing you didn't put other things on there because knowing things were going to go the length they were. And I agree with Director Beck that sticking to them is going to be difficult, but I think we have to in order to maintain, to be productive and to keep our audience. If people want to stay and understand what we're talking about, they're busting out after, an hour and a half. And so I think that's important to keep that transparency. I know they can see the minutes in the video online. I understand that, but I really think that we need to stick to guidelines and time limits and be prepared. If you know your topic's coming up, you have a time limit, that's all you're going to get, and know you're going to get cut off. And that's how it should be run.
Any other discussion? Director Hayes.
I'm not necessarily advocating for a time limit, but I think everyone needs to be cognizant of everyone else's time. Give the abbreviated version of your statement and just be mindful that, there's other people here, and if not for the other people at the table, the people in the audience. There's no point in having a meeting that just we're sitting here talking to each other. We can do that on a conference call, but I think you really do need to just kind of hit your points, give the abbreviated version, and allow someone else the time.
Anybody else? Director Gosa.
So I will agree and disagree with you, Director Salvo, because I know when we start talking about solar, you blow way over your time limit, because that's your background. And when we go to talk about buildings and stuff, I'm going to take my time with that. Now, I will say, I remember Director Kluhl, he didn't like that. He thought we were getting in the weeds, but we pushed back on a few things and saved money. And now when Mr. Maloney comes up to the podium, he's a little more prepared and has more information for us. I mean, for some issues like that. But I do believe, I understand some people can go on and on. I won't point at anybody, but ramble on and on. I think you should get to your point and get out what you're going to say, because sometimes people will say something and they'll keep going and going and going, and we started right here, we went way around here, and everybody lost sight of the real issue when we finally came back to here. So I don't know if I would be for time limits.
Anybody else? Director Potts.
Well, a conversation has a cycle. It runs a cycle. And I think it's the responsibility of the chair to instinctively know when we're starting that cycle back over again. And it's like Groundhog Day. And we're going again. And we're going again. So I think rather than maybe a strict time limit, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, an intuitive time limit that says, okay, we're saying the same stuff over again. And then the chair says, okay, obviously the conversation is over because we've run out of stuff to say. And move on.
Okay. Thank you. Director Mayfield.
My question to you, Mr. Potts, is who is to tell the chair when he's ran over?
You.
You who?
I'll let you do it.
No, do you understand what I'm saying? Huh?
Vice chair, assistant chair. What's your job?
I like that. That's a good idea. Just write him a note.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Stay in the middle of the river.
I know, I mentioned where I learned how to speak a long time. And that's because I've seen other people do that. And so I felt this is my opportunity to fully explain, which I knew it was very lengthy, but I thought necessary because I've seen others sit here at this table and do that. And I said, I understood the first 10 times you said it, but I still don't think there should be a required time. I think we should be mindful of others' time. And that's for all of us, not just one of us.
Director Beck.
I will say I've got some experience running meetings that have similar issues where people have their whatever they want to say, and they want to say it to its end. And I've learned to just step in after we've heard the cycle and say, I think we need to move on to something else now, and ask for discussion or something like that. I've found people are pretty receptive to it, but again, it's up to the whole board to decide how we want to proceed. So there's a couple of different options I'm seeing, like time limits or asking you to interrupt and say, maybe it's time to move on to the next thing.
Any other discussion? Director Potts.
I don't do you we ever do things where, like, when the conversation's lagged, then we just the president just says, okay, let's get a sense of the board, like we did on this sense of the board. Should we be dealing with this or not? Boom, 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 boom.
I'm going to address that in my remarks. Any other discussion? Director Mayfield.
Along with, though, the question is, can any board member speak up and say, let's move on, or just one? Because sometimes the person that has control of the whole entire process can keep talking.
Yeah, and I'll address that in a minute. That's
Oh, okay.
that's part of the same question.
All right.
Any other discussion? So a few things. First off, every board member here is an elected official. And and in the discussions that I've had with our lawyer, there is very, very little that a chairman or any one of us can do. And essentially, every elected official has the authority pretty much to do whatever you want. And I'll address that in a few minutes with respect to First Amendment issues and some things like that. So it's really, really hard to admonish, to cut off all of this. In my time as president, I have actually cut off two people. One was Director Kluhl, and one was Director Crumwitty. And I remember those 2 times distinctly, and they remind me of it almost every time that I see them. It's a big, big deal. It really is. With Director Crumwitty, I used my hand. And they both continue to this day, years later, to bring that up. There is a motion that can be made relative to Director Potts and Director Mayfield's question. It's called Call the Question. Any board member can make that. And Call the Question is to that point where I think things have gotten, it feels like we're going round and round again, okay? And a person can call the question, and Mary and I will get the information out to all the board members, but call the question, I don't know all the rules, whether it probably requires a second, and there's probably a simple majority of the board that can, at that point, if a majority says, we're done, then we're done. And that's part of, I can't even remember our default. Mary, what is our default? What rules? Robert's rules. Robert's rules, if you look in our policies, Robert's rules is our default unless we have precedents. Our precedents in most of these discussions is to let people talk for a while and ask questions when there's a presenter, and sometimes there's give and take. The chairman's responsibility is to try to control the flow of the meeting. And there are certain things in Robert's rules. Robert's rules recognizes, for instance, that every person should have an opportunity to speak. And so it's like you can only speak once before everybody else speaks. But that's really awkward when you're flowing. So I'm going to take it that there isn't a clear consensus yet, but I'll try and put something together that I think might be workable with the whole board with respect to this. And maybe as simple as recognizing call the question. Okay? Let's continue to move on then. So we said board members should be careful of agenda requests, remembering that time to discuss each item is important. And I think the board has generally been doing that. Perhaps a report is sufficient. The agenda committee may recommend a report instead of an agenda item. So as the agenda committee looks at every request, you might say, well, a simple report to the whole board might suffice. And I think oftentimes that happens. There's a comment here that it appears that the meetings have been getting longer in 2017. Any particular reason? We didn't have any. What about any comments or suggestions about changes to showcases, presentations, recognitions, open forum requests? So those are all part of our normal meetings. We could cut them off. We could say, well, you only have 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Director Gosa.
Personally, I love the showcases. That's probably, no offense to you guys, but that's probably the best part of the meeting. It's getting to see what the kids are doing and how excited they are about it. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing. I enjoy that a lot. I don't see limiting their time or anything. I mean, when we had Buffalo come in and they set all that stuff up. But can you imagine of limiting them? They wouldn't be able to, and they were so excited to show us all that stuff. So I couldn't see limiting them.
Anybody else? Okay. All right. Any of the other issues, presentations, recognitions, open forum requests? Open forum requests for Director Beck and Potts. Normally, we have a 2-minute limit. That's just kind of normal, but occasionally we'll only have one presenter or two, and there are times that the president may give 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. Anything else on those issues? I'm going to address language in our expulsion hearings in a minute. But before I get to that, is there anything else with respect to board protocol? So we're just talking mostly about the way we run our regular meetings like this and our committee of the whole meetings. Director DeSalvo.
I just think for all of us, it's important to communicate with Mary, like, are you going to be there or you're not going to be there? I know I struggle with that, trying to make sure I'm staying on top of her requests. That's very important. I think to be to the meetings on time and to know where she needs us to be and when is very important and respectful to all of our time, that we're here at the start time of the meeting. And if we're not going to be here, let somebody know where you're at or what's going on so that we can either proceed or wait. I think those are just respect for everybody here.
Thank you. Director Gosa.
And to add on to that, I would recommend that all the board, I don't know if you guys already do, but get your emails synced up on your phone, because she might send something out in the middle of the day, and if you don't have your laptop on you to check it, you're not going to know. Whether it's an expulsion hearing that she needs to have a quorum for. I think I'm probably the best one at always getting back to you, Mary. So I try. But yeah, I would recommend that to anybody. Because sometimes you're getting a few different emails a day, so it's nice to have it right there. And I think you got to come here, and they'll take care of it for you. It's pretty quick and painless process. But.
And I wanted to thank you especially for those remarks, because Mary does go through a lot. Trying to schedule our meetings is almost insane. All of us are busy, we have tough schedules, and sometimes she's trying to organize those meetings not only with us, but with administration and a lot of people. And expulsion hearings may be amongst the toughest, because then you have students, parents, advocates, all sorts of people involved. So thank you very much for your remarks, Director Gosa.
One other thing I will add, when Mary does call you, it might show up unavailable, just so you know, because sometimes I don't answer those. So, because I know I didn't for the longest time, and then just so everybody knows.
Thank you. That's correct. Anything else, general in nature? And there are things we can always bring up later, but okay. I want to talk about expulsion hearings, and then I want to go to the committee assignments, and then we will be done. So I've had several discussions with our council about what's appropriate in expulsion hearings. Lane and Waterman, Wendy Meyer, right. Okay. All right, sorry about that. Our legal counsel, Wendy Meyer from Lane and Waterman, about the specific issue of language in our expulsion hearings. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up is that some language and some words may be offensive to certain people. And I'm not going to tell you what these words are. You must imagine them for now. All right? But there are words that are offensive. And there are words that are sometimes used in the written statements that we receive. And those written statements cannot be redacted. The words cannot be removed from the information that's presented to the board. Does that make sense? Okay. Director Gosa?
I guess just a little bit of clarity on that. So I know like the written statements. So if the administration is reading the written statement,
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. The information that the administration presents has to be accurate. But when a board member, and there's a very distinct difference between administration who is presenting the evidence and board members who are discussing the evidence. And what I'm saying is that the board members are expected, and I'm making this as a statement, and it's based on the information that I've received from our counsel, Wendy Meyer from Lane and Waterman, is that board members should be respectful of every other board member. They should be respectful of all people, and that even though there are First Amendment issues and all of this that we don't need to get into right now, and remember that the evidence presented, sometimes it's video, sometimes it's a written statement, but it cannot be redacted. So that those words that may be offensive cannot be removed. And that's why I'm saying, however, board members do not need to use that language. If they are reading a written statement, they do not have to read a word that is offensive, known to be offensive, or even thought to be offensive to other people, especially board members. Does that make sense? Director Gosa.
Are you just talking about board members and not administration reading the thing? Just the board members?
Just
when
board
we're
members.
Okay.
Administration has a different role. They're presenting the information, but the board members are discussing the information, and they're discussing an issue, and a very serious issue. But I am saying that all board members should be respectful and should be careful not to use words that are offensive. Okay? Director Mayfield.
Are you saying, I'm not sure I understand about board members, but they cannot substitute a letter for a word. Even if everybody knows what that word is, they have to say the word.
No.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
No, I'm saying board members can use a letter.
I'm not just talking board members, I'm talking about administrators as well.
The information that I had from Wendy was that the administration, if they're going to present something, needs to, if they're going to read it, then it has to be that. But I'm worried about the board, okay? And that's what I want to address. I'll clarify, but the way that I heard it was that the administration presenting the facts need to present facts.
So they are to present what is on the paper.
That's the way I understand it.
If they choose to read it.
Right.
No, I'm not, yeah, we're talking board members, but I'm talking about administrators.
Yeah.
Administration reads it straight up.
Mhm.
As it is.
Right.
Okay. Just so you know, I have no problem with that. It's a matter of what the words are as to who it offends. Because sometimes there are words there that if you don't want to offend this one, but this person, it's okay to offend, then that difference is where it sort of bothers me.
And
that you respect one and not the other.
But the point is that if you believe that a word may be offensive, then do not use that word as a board member. Okay?
But as a board member, if you don't think it's offensive, you can use it.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd have to outlaw every word. And
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
we're trying to be general without being specific. But I've seen instances of people using words unequally.
And
that is offensive, not the fact that the words were said. But it's okay to say it about that person, but this person we're not going to say it about.
So
That's the inequity of.
So that's part of the reason for this clarification. I'm trying to say that every board member, according to our council, they have to, if a word is offensive, then a person cannot say that I can use this word, but you cannot. And that is something that is part of this whole issue. So all I'm saying is that board members should be respectful of everybody. They should try to the best of their ability to recognize what may be offensive to other board members and to not use those words. Okay? And when we get into these issues, and I will point it out during expulsion hearings, but we know that there are words used that may not be very respectful. Director Gosa.
And you might cover this later on, but so if we're reading through the packet and we do see there's something offensive, and then the administration goes to present, as a board member, can you just ask that they not read that page? Because, clearly we can read it. I don't need it read to me, but...
But I'll try to clarify the administration's authorities, but for the purposes of this meeting, I wanted to clarify it with respect to the board.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. I want to talk about committees. So we've got 4 committees. One is the agenda committee, which is set by policy as the superintendent, president, and vice president. That's the way it is. However, in the past, we have occasionally allowed other board members to participate on a part-time basis because there's this question about what really goes on in an agenda committee. Does somebody want to participate in setting the agenda, things like that? It's just something to think about. But let's talk about the other 3 committees. And I don't know if anybody here has responded to Mary in the last couple of weeks saying that they wanted. Okay, so that's Dan. Okay. On legislative advocacy right now, that's being led by Director DeSalvo. Excuse me. Is there anybody else that would like to be on legislative advocacy? Okay. All right. And we have a general rule that we only allow 3 board members on any committee because otherwise we get into quorum issues. So by having just 3 people on a committee, 3 board members, then you get away from that. So anybody else wants to be on legislative advocacy? And I'm not saying that the 3 that are there so far, if 2 more wanted to be on, then we'll make a selection. Okay. What about policy? Director Beck? Director Hayes? Anybody else? Policy? Gosa? And I'm going to put Johansson also. Now that's 4, so I'll probably strike Johansson. So that would leave Beck, Hayes, and Gosa on policy. And Director Hayes has already expressed that she does not want to be chairperson of that committee. Do either of you want to be chairman? Director Beck, you want to take that on?
I would prefer not, since I've never even been to a policy meeting. But if no one else is going to do it, I guess.
All right. Well, we'll just put you in there. You'll enjoy it. Okay, poverty. Director Hayes is on that and is leading it, right? Okay. Are there any other board members that would like to be on the poverty committee?
I would like to at some point, but I need to stick with just one thing right now.
Okay, then I'm going to volunteer and I'll work with Director Hayes on how I can participate. Okay, I think that's it for committee assignments. Nobody else wants to be on any committees that we've... Sure, go ahead.
But I will make some considerations in the next week or so and let you know.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. All right, with that, this meeting is done. I would accept a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, wait.
Request.
Oh, my gosh. Board requests.
So
Yeah, take back the motion. We have 4 board requests so far. First is from Director Hayes, an agenda item. I'd like to have a discussion on how the board feels about printing out all of the information that is listed on the agenda for the public to view during our discussions. Why are you requesting this information? One of our community leaders has strong feelings about this, and I would like it publicly discussed to get a feel on whether or not online access is sufficient. When would you like this oh, I need a second. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information or agenda item? October 23rd meeting. So that's probably a couple weeks. Next is Director Hayes' agenda item. There has been quite a few reported incidents of bullying within the district. I would like a discussion on feelings and the no bullying signs removed until we get a better handle on what can be done about it. Why are you requesting this information? When you walk into a school and see the signs all around, you feel safe until you discover the signs are not respected by everyone. Once you've been the victim, the signs give a fraudulent perception. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information or agenda item? ASAP. Next is an information request from Director Johansson, date of request today. I'd like a report on the meeting with between the administration and city with respect to ADA, especially with respect to J.B. Young. Why are you requesting this information? I believe ADA needs to be properly understood, interpreted, and applied. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like the information? After the meeting occurs. Next is an agenda request from Director Johansson, today's date. I'd like a discussion of board responsibilities and relationships with the administration. No, we had a very specific discussion on the use of athletic facilities. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? So that we can hopefully be a little more efficient with our time. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah. Director DeSalvo seconded that. When would you like this information or agenda item? When there's time. Yeah, there will be time. So, okay, now we have a motion to adjourn on the table. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting's adjourned.